died, likely died from within 3 weeks of the vaccine, from something within 3 weeks of the vaccine. 338,000. I mean, on the same day, somewhere between 2,345 and 5,628 died on the same day they got the COVID vaccine. That's what those numbers extrapolate to. So that's 67. But hey, 67 in a sampling of only 180,000 records, which are only about 90,000 distinct people.
This is the Massachusetts data?
No,
This is national.
this is a Medicare
That's
database.
national. Okay, great. Because I was like, holy crap. Okay,
Yeah,
so that's 300,000.
yeah,
Jesus.
within 3 weeks of the vaccine. Now, some of those are natural, have nothing to do with the vaccine, obviously.
Sure. Yeah, yeah, always.
But how many? I mean, you
But
know,
but also like not a normal amount that's going to set off actuaries at insurance companies where they're like, holy fuck.
yeah.
The insurance companies across the board have been like, what the fuck is going on? Like 40% increases in death?
So the
Yeah.
problem is you can't get a denominator here, and therefore the data is yeah, nearly useless. So trying to figure out schemes. I mean, my method is just to say, do you want to take a vaccine where you know somewhere between 2,000 and 6,000 people die
Oh, well, my God. I mean,
on the same day?
I was
On the
dating a
same day.
girl at the time, and her sister-in-law was pregnant and like in line, like
Oh God,
tapping her feet and like can't wait to take the fucking injection while she's pregnant.
that's insane.
It is, you know, my God, you know, and it, well, it ended our relationship. I ended our relationship. I couldn't date her anymore because she was all like, "Yeah, you go, girl. Yeah, you know, fuck Putin and Ukraine and Trump and get your fucking vaccine, right?"
Yeah, that I mean, I don't even know what to say. That's
I know, I know, and I just worry about that kid, like the baby that's gonna come out. Like, what is that baby gonna be? Is it gonna be? It's gonna be like double allergic to peanuts. Is it gonna be mentally retarded? Like, we don't even know. We have no clue. But that girl couldn't line up fast enough. She would have got a preview of the vaccine if she could have.
yeah. I didn't actually talk about some of the kids that have died recently. 11-year
Oh,
old
I
boy.
bet.
Yeah, they donated his heart. He had chest pain after his booster, and he was dead in a few days. And
Uh,
they donated his heart. They pulled it out, and it was full of clots.
this is like children we're talking about.
11-year-old boy.
Oh my God.
There was this a couple of weeks after him. There was a 6-year-old girl, but we don't know.
Wow.
Families aren't talking. People. It's
Yeah.
it's weird. I don't understand it. I'd be screaming from the rooftops. That woman who did she lose her sister, or the one that was just on it was a video on Twitter, and she's screaming. No, her father maybe. I can't remember who died, but she was very angry, and I was like, "You go get him."
Yeah.
All right, you guys want to wrap this up?
We do. Let's head into the Twitter space and take some questions and do all that. A
All
little
right,
bit of
very
after show party. John, thank you so much for doing all this work. I mean, like, I've actually gone pretty deep on Excel and Access, but oh my God, you're a literal god. So keep it up, and let's do a part three. Yeah, I assume in a month or two you're gonna get new data. Let's reconnect and keep this going. The reaction on Rumble is fantastic. So let's keep this going.
All right, sounds good. And
Yeah.
don't forget, I got strokes coming out, so we can maybe do another.
Yeah, yeah. God, I mean, like, it's so weird where, like, we're publishing videos and we're getting excited about people getting eyes on this, but it's death. It's death. Like, people are dying. I don't want to get excited about it, but at the same time, we have to turn it around. We have to get opinion turned. We have to get eyes on this. So Thank you, John, for everything you do.
Yeah, thanks a lot, John.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you. All right, we'll reconnect in a few weeks. Everybody now that's going here, everyone go to @WogPogReal. Find this Twitter space, and you'll find us on there. We can answer questions and talk a little bit further tonight. Thank you, John. Gonna kick you from the stream. And all I gotta say. Holy crap. All right, we're still live a little bit. Rain, God, what do you think of all that, man? Just watching it, like it's kind of like everything that we've been talking about.
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Yep.
I'm just getting a high pitch kind of whine.
Yeah, I'm getting that too. Is that you, Wog?
Yeah, it's gone.
Right, guys. Is that is that better?
I couldn't figure out what it was. That was something on mine.
No, yeah, it's these freaking USB-C earplugs. No one's managed to make a proper set of them yet. I'm like, okay, taking away all our proper earplug things. That's why I still have my sturdy old Pixel 4a 5G. So great presentation. That's awesome. So kind of freaky again. And like Super was saying, we don't want to rejoice on other people's negative aspects here, but I mean, this is looking worse and worse and worse every time that we do this. So,
yeah, it's very different than presenting data, because these are real people, and there are certain people that I recognize, because I looked up their obituaries and stuff, and yeah, I kind of, you guys probably can't hear it. I try to blow through it, but I kind of stop and get a little emotional when I think about the parents losing their kids and stuff, especially Brian. He lost his daughter Brianna. So yeah, it's a bummer. It's certainly not a fun Friday night, but people got to wake up. This is going to happen again if we don't push back and push back hard. We should demand the data from the government. They're hiding it. They'll give you anything. They'll give you the toxicology, the blood alcohol level of the person that somebody's riding in a car with about a death, but they won't give you the vax date. They say, oh, well, now privacy laws kick in. You can have anything else about the death, but you can't have the vax date. And they know it would be the end. Not only the end of this vax, who knows? It might even end all the vaxes because they've been hiding this for a long time. They even go so far as to break up the lots. And this is back in the 70s. They decided they're going to break up the lots and ship them all over the country. You had to get special permission to ship a lot to any one location. I mean, that's purposely confounding the ability to forensically figure out any negative, adverse events from the vax. But now we have computers, so we can figure out the lots. So what's going on with you guys? Have you been on this case a while?
Sean, I'd like to speak if I can.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, okay. Okay. One thing is that there's a group in Japan that is suing the government over their hiding of the data there. Another is that the CDC leaves 30% of the age field blank, even though on many of them, those are clearly there in the write-up. So I wrote some code that extracts 75%, fills in 75% of those blanks. And so any age analyses on VAERS ought to be using my data.
Hey, can I ask you questions on that?
Yeah, sure.
You know Albert Benavides?
Yep.
And do you know, oh shoot, I'm drawing a blank. He's VAERS aware. You know Open VAERS?
No, I've tried communicating with Liz and she hasn't gotten back to me.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about. Yeah, I'm not sure if she wants to know her name out there, so I shy away from saying it. So I can definitely get you to Liz. Yeah. So what you're saying is important. Albert has said that they're withholding a lot of these ages, and if you have a way of figuring it out, then by all means, let's get you guys hooked up.
Well, Albert and I had several emails back and forth today, for example.
Oh, good. Okay, so you're all set with Albert.
But I sure would like to have somebody put in a good word for it with Craig. You know who I'm talking about, right?
No, actually.
Well, his name is out there. How bad is my batch, basically?
Oh, that guy. Okay. Yeah, I don't play with that. I just had too much to do, and I really should have gotten involved in that, but I just have a mental block on how bad is my batch. I believe in it. I think it's great work. I just don't know anybody.
Well, that's what got me started. In December of 2021, I saw one of his videos, and I saw those lot numbers on the screen, and I recognized that a lot of them were typos. And later it dawned on me that the reason there are a lot of typos in lot numbers are people are going into the hospital, the nurse asks for their Vax card, they want to file a report as required by law in VAERS, and they're trying to read someone's handwriting, the lot number on the Vax card. And so trying to do the best they can, I think, but they often get it close but wrong. So I applied some spell check AI engines to it, and I'm correcting over 150,000 of those. Now, at first it was a little bit of guesswork, but then I found some techniques to obtain lot numbers from Moderna and from J&J with their expiration dates, so we know they're valid lots, right? By the way, I ran that again yesterday, and there are 46 lots that Moderna was reporting on their website, if you look them up, and they're no longer there. So I don't know what's going on with that.
And you wouldn't be able to correlate them with VAERS reports or death. That's just fixing their database is what you're doing, or is that?
Well, no. See, once you have the lot typos corrected, then the numbers on these lots change. So you can have like 5,200 of the lot 039K20A, but then after you run this process, you wind up with 6,500 of those. So it's actually a lot worse than it seemed.
Yeah. Because
there were a lot of typos on that one, for example. Others, they always go up in number, these groups, but they go up to different degrees. The typos are more prevalent on some of them than others.
Oh, that's awesome. Would
Make sense?
you is that something you testify to under oath, the work that you've done and the data that you've got? I'm always looking for witnesses.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yep, absolutely. I got an article out on Substack on that that's been pretty much ignored. I don't know why. Um, the collection of
What's your Substack?
lot numbers
What's your
with their
Substack ID?
deep dots.
Deep Thoughts?
Deep dots.
Oh, Deep Dots. Okay, thank you.
And the collection of official lot numbers is over 3,200 of those. It's the best collection out of all 8 billion of us on the planet.
Awesome. Great, great. Maybe I'll be in touch if I can get past the motion to dismiss. So
If you can get past the motion to dismiss,
if
I missed something. I tuned in just a little bit ago.
I have a federal lawsuit against the state of Massachusetts for fraud. We'll see what happens. I'm asking for the vax dates. Give me the vax dates. But
Wait, so you can't talk about it because of that?
no, I can talk about it. I just gave a whole presentation.
Uh,
Everybody in here, well, not everybody, most of the people in here just watched me give an hour-and-a-half presentation on death certificates correlated with VAERS report and all the causes of death.
Yeah, it's on Super Spreader's account there. He's got the full Rumble video there. This is the second one that we've done. So John's going through the data, through the death certificates. He's gotten his hands on those, and what we're really aching for is the vaccine date data set. So if we can get those two, then we're set. And on that note, we have a buddy of ours, independent journalist up here in Canada. He's sniffing around the Quebec numbers, and he's like, "Well, give me your excess death number." Demanded this from the government, and the government's like, "Well, it's complicated. We don't know what it did." So they don't have it. And then also excess death means that we're putting definitions into their hands. We've known this for a long time. What we need to do is we need the all-cause mortality, and we want the vaccination dates. That's all we want. Just give us those two things. That should be public. You can randomize the data. We don't give a shit. If we have those two things, we're set. So
yeah, I think you mean anonymize the data, right?
yeah, well, it doesn't matter. Either way, yep. Yeah, anonymize, yep. I don't know what I said, but yeah, that's what I meant.
John, when their suit against you on fraud fails, can you sue them for malicious prosecution or something like that?
No, sorry. Let me back up. I am suing the state. I'm the plaintiff. The defendant is the governor, the commissioner of public health, the chief medical examiner, and 4 individual medical examiners for committing massive amounts of fraud on death certificates where they wrote COVID as a cause of death, where COVID was not a cause of death, and where they did not write the vaccine as a cause of death, where the vaccine absolutely was a cause of death.
Okay, yeah, got it. Thanks.
John, did you get most of your data through FOIA requests or discovery as part of your lawsuit?
Yeah, we're not even. I don't even know if I'll make it to discovery. I got the information through a state FOIA called a public records request in Massachusetts law, and then found out later that I don't even think we needed to do that. We just needed the request of the right person, and then even further, it may have been an angel who gave it to us. Maybe somebody wanted us to have it, and I'm not sure that I should have all the de-identified data. But what I have is 500,000 death certificates, no de-identification, no redaction. I have every detail, every name, everything.
Okay. I just got my first FOIA request denied. I'm looking at learning the process now. So is there, do we know that states or provinces, for that matter, always have the vaccination date when of a disease, or
not always? Well, it depends on what state you're in, but in most states in the United States, if not all, there's a box that you check if you don't want your name to be associated with the vaccine. So there will be anonymous vaccinations where somebody checked the box. Like a lot of people in New Hampshire check the box, people in Texas check the box because they don't want the state knowing personal information because they don't trust the state to keep it secret and private. But for the most part, most people don't check the box, even in those states. Most people. So there's tremendous amount of information in there, and every state has a system, and I guarantee you, in Canada, every province has a system where it's a vaccine or an immunization registry. So look for immunization registry or vaccine registry, and you'll find specific law that states the database program that should be created and how it should be maintained.
Right. Yeah. So the way FOIA works is if it's work, they can say no. But going in, you don't necessarily know what's worked for them and what isn't. So we'll probably have to iterate.
Yeah. So what I did
a few times.
was the first one they told me to be $22,000, and the second one I narrowly tailored it, and I told them this is less than 15 minutes worth of work for an IT guy. So I'm willing to pay $6.25, which is a quarter of an hour of the $25 an hour rate you wanted to charge me for the 22,000. And what are they going to do? Are they going to say, well, our IT guy takes 50,000 hours for what it would take another IT guy 15 minutes because we're the government? They can't say that. So they were kind of boxed into a corner. So.
But I think your vector here, Guillaume, if I'm reading what John's laying down, is that there was another avenue that he could have pursued, and so what you have to do, you have to figure out like what are the laws in Quebec to try to vector into that, right? So a FOIA may be the right one, but there may you may have you may have the right to see the records maybe in an anonymized state or whatever. That would be probably some kind of privacy concern there. But Quebec is a different animal in Canada. And then just to your point, like what I'm trying to say with this Noah Chartier guy, who is the Epoch Times reporter, and he's been denied his FOIA request, but he's asking for excess deaths and vac status and all this other shit. And they're saying we don't have it. Excess mortality is basically giving them the levers to the machine to spit it out to you. All we want to do is just see death by vac status. That's all we need to do. Now we can do what John's doing, where we get the death certificates and get all the codes and stuff. Then we can start piecing it together ourselves and seeing if they are feeding in this information. If is the right hand talking to the left hand, essentially, with that stuff. But there is usually a mechanism where you can get the data out without a FOIA request. But that Noah guy is lost in the woods. He's just a reporter and he doesn't understand what he's asking for is, excess. He's been seeing a lot of graphs of people with excess mortality here and doodly doo there. We don't want them producing their own excess mortality. We're just giving into their definition drift and statistical canoodling one more time, right?
We're actually talking, and you just made me think of something. The government at some point, I think I need to go back to old notes, but I think the government was publishing deaths by vac status because at the very beginning it was a tool. It was basically a marketing tool, and they pulled it. And
yeah, they pulled it when they crossed. So here in BC, it was
long before they crossed. They pulled them. They pulled it when the hospitalizations crossed. When the data showed that were more likely to go to the hospital, but the next it started with infection, then hospitalizations, and you could guess what was coming next.
Yeah, right. It was cases by vac status. But see, you have they're way more on top of it in Quebec, where they were like, "Ooh, we better stop this." I think it took us till June or July when it was outcome by vac status, and then I think by August they had stopped all of them across Canada because, of course, the data was just trouncing them soundly. And remember, that's with their little canoodling of putting the 14-day period after your vaccination to going back to the prior vaccination state. So if you got one, you were going to unvaccinated. That's how they got the whole thing to work there. And that's been going on for years too, because John was talking about like the lot thing for other prior vaccines. And I think this is what's happening to people is it's, what was the tweet that I retweeted today? It was a guy who's like, guys, I've just been red pilled. Like, I'm having a hard time. Like, this was like a, boomer or pre-boomer kind of dude. And it's like, I retweeted it and I was going to say something nice to him, but there's 1,000 replies to him. Like, this is what happens, right? Because once you come onto this side, it's like, well, Jesus Christ, now are we talking about all vaccines? I mean, I don't really want to have a room about that, right? Like at this point, but again, when we see this canoodling of like, well, 14 days after, that's considered unvaccinated. Well, that's why your SIDS, your sudden infant death syndrome, has been going on so long. And that's why we saw a very weird dip in Florida when people weren't going to do their quote unquote wellness checks, which are basically vaccination appointments with their pediatricians. Why did SIDS go down in the year 2020? Well, people didn't want to go to a doctor's office. They didn't want to bring their newborns in and their the youngsters in to whatever thing, because all of that participation went down, and SIDS dropped as well. So, that's an interesting metric. I wonder why SIDS dropped. Well, it's not related to being vaccinated by your MMR or whatever crap that they're giving you, hepatitis when you're 1 day old or whatever nonsense that they're doing. Oh, it's not related to that, because within 14 days, which is when most adverse events happen, that number is shifted to the prior number. And in the case of a newborn, it's shifted to unvaccinated. And that's why they can't correlate this stuff. It's just statistical, nonsensory. But what we have to do is hook up this guide these people. I've been trying to do it like loosely, on Twitter. There's some guys applying for FOIAs. They don't know what they're doing. It comes back and they're not asking the right question, because what's what the government's going to do? It's going to take 6 months. It's going to say, didn't ask the right question. We don't have the answer for that. So you got to know how to craft these FOIAs. Some guys are really good at it, and we should have that working group should be in the background. But everybody's we're duplicating effort all over the place here. But yeah.
So I've got in my hand a Shiner Bach from Shiner, Texas. It's awesome. I love these things. But to the point of the information and what you get from the government with cases and hospitalizations, I never looked at cases. I didn't look at hospitalizations or ICUs, but I respect that data as being, valuable. I only looked at deaths going all the way back to April of 2020, because they can't fudge them, because I found out they were fudging everything. They were lying. They can lie about cases. They can get PCR tests up the yin yang or in the nose. But it's all bullshit. As soon as the data started turning on them with the who's vaxxed and who's not vaxxed, then they stopped telling you. Obviously, it's all propaganda. So everybody on this call should be just getting angry. Get the data. Get the data from the government. Contact your rep or your MP or whatever. I don't know. I see John Garrett there. He's a friend. I don't know if he wants to come up and say anything. I'm thinking.
Okay, John Garrett. Let me see if I can get him up here. In the meantime, Brian, did you have an observation while I try to figure out? I may not see him. So, John, if you want to request a mic, I'll get you up. But Brian, any observations so far? You're usually on the ball.
Well, I don't know about that, Wog. No, it was great actually seeing John's presentation for the first time on Rumble. Highly recommend it to everybody. I shared it. Is that same link going to be linked to a recording of that as well?
Yep.
I'm guessing it is. Yeah. So I'd highly recommend that to anybody. It's one thing I've heard John's data. I don't know about you. I'm a real visual person, but when you start seeing the data, that's got a whole different impact on you. It's especially the names, but just you're humble, John, but thanks for all the work you do. Everybody just goes ahead and, becomes their own attorney and their own researcher. No, you're an amazing guy. It's the great work you're doing. I love it.
Thanks much. Anybody have any questions? The data is so just straightforward, and I'm no expert at anything. So just it is what it is. It's from the state of Massachusetts.
Well, you said the strokes have your attention now. Is that correct?
Yeah. So strokes in the past, I looked for I6 codes, I619, I634, and I wasn't really finding any signal. In fact, weirdly, I do want to investigate this someday. I just don't have time now. 2019 had a lot of strokes. like a really lot. Like, what was that all about? Is there something that came through and killed people by stroke that we never knew about? That's as much as high as that is. That's what I'm thinking. Because what I do, that the public health department has never, Department of Public Health has never done, is track the rates of change of all these things. I mean, why do we have them? What do they do? I don't get it. I'm one guy doing this, and I'm not that. I'm no genius. I'm smart. I know I'm smart. I'm no genius. What the hell do they do? So anyway, I'm tracking strokes now, but I went into the G's instead of the I's, and I'm finding stuff. Because I noticed with a CVSD, which I kind of don't know what it is. Thrombosis is a clot, and venous is it's in a vein, not an artery, and cerebral is head. But the sinus thing, does it go down to the sinus thing? Is it directly from the heart with that sinus thing? I don't know what it's called, vein. Cerebral venous sinus thrombosis. That's my guess. It's a specific type of stroke. It used to be very rare. But what I noticed is they're up. And so I started looking at codes around there. Like instead of just G08, what about G04? And what about G6, G7, G8? And I just mapped them all out yesterday. And I have a whole bunch of them that are up in either 22 or 21, one or the other. So it's something to look at. So that's what I'm spending my time on now.
And I heard you talk about, obviously there's some of these doctors that this is what they do. I guess they do the autopsies, or at least they're really involved in the death certificates. I had screaming children at the time. I missed some points here, but did you say that, did it look like there was some either incompetence or malfeasance on the part of at least one of those doctors?
Well, I mean, four of them and the chief are defendants in my lawsuit. Yeah, absolutely. There's stuff going on. I mean, I don't want to put them behind bars or anything. I want the truth. I just want the truth. I want them to be compelled to go back and fix the fraud, stop doing fraud, and don't do any more fraud. And as I look at it and I determine the behaviors and the percentages of the ones they're calling COVID, it seems to me almost as if there's a quota. And they can hit their numbers if everybody just does this many. And so some of them might say, oh, I'll just get them all out of the way. I'll just say COVID on the first 10 that come in or whatever. Why are they doing acute fentanyl intoxication and blunt force trauma deaths as COVID? They need to fill a quota is all I can think of. Like who else are they going to put them on? If they put them on somebody who died of a heart attack or a stroke, then they have to kind of justify how COVID did that.
Well, what about the monetary incentive here? Is it that exists in Massachusetts?
Well, yeah, but the medical examiners work for the state, and so they wouldn't be tied into the hospital. The deaths that are certified by the medical examiners are actually fewer than the ones who would die in the hospital, right?
Yeah.
The medical examiners get people who died alone or died young, under a certain age. And most people, if they have something, they go to the hospital, they die in the hospital. It'll be the attending physician that does the death certificate. So it's a numbers game. The way I look at it is, if I find, and I did find that somewhere between 15 and 17 out of 9, somewhere between 17 and 18 out of 21 death certificates seem to be fraudulently labeled as COVID. Out of Janice Gravetti's 21, 19, somewhere between 17 and 19 seem to be fraudulent. Only 2 to 4 seem to be real. So if that's the case, and you want to extrapolate, that's a hell of a lot in terms of the number of deaths that are fraudulent. But that's for medical examiners, which are a smaller set, whereas hospitals are a larger set. And I don't have, I could probably do that study. I could probably find out like what physicians in hospitals certified the most, and then kind of look into them. I'm going to write that down. I should try that. Get Mark here too. Housatonic.live. Oh, Mr. E, there's a hand up. Mr. E.
Oh yeah, yeah. We're just sort of casualizing it here, Mr. E. No need for hands at this point. Some very, very polite people here. Anybody wants a mic, just request one, and then yeah, I'm actually diving on something else here. I'm trying to do something else. I'm not even looking at the phone. What a terrible
All right.
absentee landlord I am. Go ahead, Mr. E.
You know, I don't
Mr.
like to
E.
interrupt, Wog. So thanks. And John, appreciate your comments. I'm sorry I missed the beginning. I'll have to catch the recording later. Interesting. I didn't expect to be kind of looking at this tonight, but I was curious about these strokes. I just happened to be earlier in the week, and I was doing a little research off the side. I had a whole bunch of tabs open. I was looking into this, and I said, I need to be focused on work and some other stuff. And so I didn't even do tabs aside. I closed the whole thing down. So what was interesting though is I took some screenshots, and then I used that right now to just go back up and pull the paper that I had been reviewing, that I found particularly interesting with what you were just talking about, which was the classification of these, the autopsies, the death certificates, and all of this. And so this particular one that I was looking at was a population study done in Denmark, where they were going through certificates where there had been sudden death in individuals 15 to 59 years old in the country, and then went through all of this sudden death cases and identified which were stroke subtypes, and then they separated those out by the different types. And what was particularly good that you might find interesting, which is the reason I hopped up to say something, is that this looked at retroactively like 2000 to 2009. And so that provides, a fairly broad historical benchmark for a whole country. They looked at 15,000 roughly total deaths, right? And then of that, only about 1,700 were sudden unexpected deaths. And then they went through which ones were autopsied, unautopsied, and which were sudden cardiac and non-stroke, et cetera. And so what was also good in here was just the flow chart that was used to go through the data set to separate them into every category. So some of them were traumatic brain injuries, right? So a sudden death, someone falls off, a first story, whatever, that's not the type that maybe we're interested in here. So it was a good way to segment out some of the data. And so I'll close it with that. And other than to say, in searching for that, I saw another one just now, 2021 journal article, Sudden Death in Adults, a Practical Flowchart for Pathologist Guidance. So some of these things could be potentially helpful to you, in the classification, as you go through the data, or some other codes that could be in here. You've probably gone much further already, but I just tossed that out there.
Hey, that's really awesome. Everything I've been doing is kind of manual, and then the ideas that I have in an ad hoc forensic process, where I go high level, and then I look for anomalies, and when I drill down into the anomaly to see if there's any difference, and I go back up in hierarchy to do the data analysis where I think I found something, and so everything you just discussed is where I want to go. I would like to seek funding, because what I want to do could provide, every public health department in every state, every county in the United States, and all over nations all over the world should have a system like I would like to devise with AI to be able to produce, here's all, shove all the data in for the last 50 years, and out comes, these are your anomalies ranked in the 400%, 800% over normal or whatever, whether it's by zip code or excuse me, by gender, by age. It'll find them all, and once we do that, then we can start mapping what's happening to our society, and then you can start making attributions to various foods, water supply, temperature and climate change or whatever, if they want to make those attributions, this will allow them to do that, which they won't find any attribution to climate change, right? There's still a cyclical every year in a cold climate. It's a sine wave. Anyway, I'm done, but I appreciate the comments. That's awesome.
What's the defense against long COVID here? Because I too have been looking at these numbers, like the prior, we're seeing something weird in 2019, and then even in 2020 we're seeing some weird data there. So what's the definition, or how do we defend against that sort of conflation here, John?
I personally don't give a shit about long COVID. If that's the play they want to make, then give me the vax status of all those with long COVID, because I'll say it's a long vax. Prove to me that they're not vaxxed and they have long COVID. So every time they pull out long COVID, I'll say, show me the vax date. Otherwise, don't talk to me, because you're full of shit. I'll say it right to their face, because that's the reality.
No, I get it. I've been dealing with in some of the rooms. I mean, I have very little trust here, even though, in this whole situation, I view everything as basically half horse shit until, and I could cross reference it with something else. But I'm hearing some anecdotal references, some people floating around in spaces that seem to have ingratiated themselves right up into co-host and all the rest of it, that are, long haul COVID people and don't have and have never been vaxxed.
No, it's real.
And that's what.
Well, I'm sorry to cut you off, but I just don't want.
Yeah,
I don't want to leave myself hanging out here as a person who says that's not real.
Well, that's what I was just going to do, is cover my ass. But you go first, and I'll cover my ass later.
Okay, so everything that COVID does, not everything. Okay, everything besides the cold and pneumonia kind of thing that COVID does, the vax also does, but it does it at 100 times the rate, as far as I can tell. So strokes are occurring from COVID. I've had arguments about this, and I believe stronger in truly good anecdotal evidence than I do with statistics. And when I heard the neurosurgeon or brain surgeon, whatever, the brain surgeon talking about operating on a clot in somebody's brain, and he's done like 10,000 operations before, and he's never seen clots forming while he's removing one. He saw two forming while he was removing one, and that really made an impact on me. And then I, looking up some of the clotting that happened from COVID, it's real. It's real. In the very few instances where it gets into the body and the spike protein is affecting certain people, they're having clotting issues. They're having strokes. They're having clots. They're having heart problems. It's real. But talk about the word rare. It's 100 times more rare than the vaccine. You're injecting past your mucosal defenses in your lungs directly into your body. So, I do believe that long COVID is real. I feel bad for those people who suffer, but 100 times that are suffering from the vaccine with long vaccine injury. Thanks.
Yeah, and that. So then, what my disclaimer is basically, I haven't really looked into it, right? And there's sort of somewhat a reason for that. What I want to do is I want to stop this shot, right? That's my primary goal here, is to stop this, and then we can start looking at the data. And I want full data transparency. That's my other thing. There's no reason in this day and age that we can't have full rolling data transparency. As soon as it becomes available, it should just be on a rolling cloud server. That's just we just all have access to it. We can solve so many of humanity's problems if you crowdsource it. That's why they go to that's why defense contractors don't just do it all in-house in the government. They'd still be working on the first airplane if that was the case. You need the ecosystem of all of us, right? And we've touched on that in other rooms about just how the malfeasance here of such high order of trying to get, who knows exactly what's going on motivationally here, but clearly this thing does not work. We've picked up everybody's picked up signal of it in their own different way here. People are doing different stuff, but it's extremely frustrating that we're not, I don't know, that we're not I want to see more. I want to see the way that you're looking at stuff being done in more areas. And so what's the status on Kirsch thing there? He sort of dropped a little egg bomb there last Friday and came out and said that he's been sitting on the full VAC data or base of, I can't even remember what he said in that room. I mean, he made it sound like he had the whole country, but I did see a little blurb about him having New Hampshire or something like that, or Vermont numbers or something like this. Did anything ever come out of that?
He said he had Connecticut. He wrote a couple of Substacks on it, and it's more than Connecticut. I have the spreadsheet on my computer right now. I didn't tell you. I've been talking to Steve almost every day about it.
Yeah, well, that's good. That's good. So can we look forward to similar, or we still don't have the VAC status date?
There's no denominator you can compare against. Like, I mean, I went over this in the at the end of the 90 minutes I just did, and that's where this comes from. But he has another data set he got though that I don't have. Yeah, I shouldn't be saying this. I should just be saying I might have access to a database. I opted not. I have a Substack written, but I opted not to put it out because none of this can be confirmed, and I don't know. I'd have to check my math again. I have a good friend who wrote the sequel to do this for me, and she got the numbers for me. And it's damning. I mean, even if it's off by 50%, it's still damning. I mean, they shut down a vaccine for 54 people dying countrywide, and here it is 67 people dying on the date of the vaccine. On the same day, 67 people died. And now what's the denominator? In that case, it's around 90,000. But if you just extend out to 3 weeks, it's 4,000 people out of 90,000. 4,029 died within 3 weeks of the vaccination. Now, okay, a lot of people die, and a lot of people are vaccinated, so maybe they just happen to die because in an amount of time, so many people die per day all over the country. So to figure it out with the right denominator is really difficult because anytime he came up with something or I came up with something, we'd shoot each other down. But he seemed like he had a good graph. I think he put it out there. Go look at his Substack. He might withdraw that because,
Yeah, I read it. At least he was transparent with this screw ups or whatever.
Yeah.
But I guess what it drives home is that we should have transparent data. This is the year 2000 here.
Yeah.
Or 21st century. I mean, why don't we just have transparent data here? Let us figure it out. And we can figure out so many other different magnanimous things. Like it's really, do we just have to turn this corner? And they, of course, want to fool us into thinking that it's going to be some AI powered, mega machine where we'll all be, matrixed up into some hose into the back of our neck. We all know that that's bullshit. I mean, that room, the last space that we did there when we had Super Spreaders had, Dr. Wesley Smith on there, all I needed was 10 minutes with that dude. How much have we learned since 1985 till now? 0.5% more of the specificity of how the brain works, not the amount of grants, not the amount of studies, not the amount of whatever, 0.5%. So if AI wasn't available to do back then, it's not available to do now. Why? Because if you don't know how the brain works, you can't create a program that recreates that. Like that's base level of what that stuff is with AI. Can we use machine learning? Can we use, AI sort of algorithmically? Yeah, we can do all that stuff. And it's very powerful. And we're going to be able to do magical things with that. But when we get into all this stuff, we start to see people think that our advancement of science has been so incredible in the last, it really hasn't. Our understanding of immunology, virology, okay, let's name the theories out first. I don't really want the room to pivot too hard this way, but quantum is a theory, right? Quantum mechanics are a theory. Viral, it's a theory. Germs are a theory. As far as I'm concerned, vaccines are a theory, but that's just me and my weirdo-ness. But when it comes down to this stuff, we have a God complex going on here, and I think that's the thing. Like when I hit on with that, I was mentioning that guy before. He's like, I just got red pilled, but it's like it's overwhelming, and it's just a one little line tweet, and I sort of feel bad for the guy, but I don't feel bad for the guy because it's like that's what it's going to take. We're all just going to have to open up our eyes, however painful it is, and just keep on moving forward.
Yeah, I agree. Rip the Band-Aid off at this point. John, you mentioned SQL. Can you share any of the tool set you're using, or what, just your data analysis stack looks like? Just curious. I might have some input to
it was easy stuff. I don't know SQL, so I was just talking to her on the phone, and she was just doing it in front of me as we were zooming, and she was just popping all these numbers out with simple simple routines. Nothing big, just so you got 180,000 records, and give me all the distinct ones, not the unique ones, the distinct ones, and then count the number of days, subtract the date, and give me the number of days 0, 1, 3, 7, 14, and 21. So I did 1 week, 2 week, 3 week, and then I did same day, and then next day, and then 3 days. That's all. It's real simple.
Yeah, cool. I don't know if you're then popping it into Excel or other things. I don't know if you've ever used data science notebooks, but that's something, if you're ever interested, reach out to me.
Yeah.
I do it with the Julia language and, Jupyter notebooks or Pluto notebooks or those types of things, and can use ODBC to go to a database. So I've run a SQL server locally. I use MariaDB, but whatever. And then, there's some other things you can do. You can also just run a single file MySQL database if you don't want to spin up a server.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. My career, I tell everybody this, my career is in sales and marketing. I interface to a lot of technical people, and when it comes to writing code, I wrote Fortran in college. You want to talk about that? I don't do it. I'm not that technical. I can run a spreadsheet. I can do calculations. The formula that I need, I can logically go through conditionals to give me what I need to generate all these codes and stuff. But that's not really writing a high-level language code. I left that behind, 30-something years ago. 35, how old am I? Whatever. Long time ago. 40, almost 40 years ago. So I appreciate everything you're saying. All the guys that I worked with, all the engineers writing all their Python scripts to get, and all the APIs to our tools. I sold simulation, synthesis, layout, all semiconductor IC tools. So we had to know what we were talking about, but I didn't get involved in writing code. So I do appreciate what you're saying. I just know what can be done. And with simple AI routines, we can have the best public health data in the world. One guy could write it, and we could have just so much better than what the government gives us. Government is freaking crap. They're the least efficient system of anything you can come up with. It's just garbage.
Yeah, this gets into the whole area of reproducibility with research and, some of that side. I see Beniro's got his hand up, or their hand up. So I had another question for you after. Go ahead.
Me go ahead? So I hope I don't derail the conversation when I just interject this little observation. All of what you're talking about is way over my head. It's interesting, and I'm listening, but I can't relate. But something Wog said reminded me of a conversation I had just today, actually. He mentioned AI. I had a conversation with somebody about AI, and it was sort of, we were talking about metaphysics also and reality. And he said the reason they can't get AI done properly, or it's sort of gone as far as it can go is, and I'm probably going to butcher this, but my interpretation of it was that they can't get like AI to comprehend um, space or something, like not outer space, but like the existence of nothingness, like just air, because what this individual and I were talking about was the fact that um, like dogs, for example, they just sense energy, and the only reason there's a table there is because we all agree that there's a table there. And then that's when he started talking about how AI, they've gotten as far as they can go because there's something they can't input, that calculation or whatever it is that's required to comprehend the world around us. Anyway, so I started out by apologizing for possibly derailing the conversation, but I just was sort of piggybacking on something Wog said about metaphysics and AI. So thanks for the mic.
If you don't mind, I'll comment on that, because every time I hear AI, I mean, as an engineer, I just think of it as just another set of software programs. It's not really AI. But I guess when it comes to regular people, when they hear AI, they're actually thinking artificial intelligence. I mean, there's no such thing. There's never going to be any such thing. I don't care how many arguments that people put up against it. It's just never going to friggin' happen. People are people, and we're intelligent, and machines aren't. They do what we tell them to do, and they're going to adhere to whatever programming. Now, they can learn on their own because they have inputs. No. That's still programmed too.
I'm very happy to hear that, because AI scares the hell out of me. So I'm happy to hear that. I told the individual I was talking to today, the reason I started being afraid of AI was because of a movie I saw decades ago called AI. It was called Artificial Intelligence, obviously, and it was about a boy that was created. He was artificial. He had parents, and he, of course, lived for an eternity. And something happened. I don't know. I forget how it went, but it was horrifying because they gave this little boy the human emotion, or what children require, which is an attachment to their parents, or to the adults who are looking after them. And he got separated from his family, and of course he lived for an eternity, and all he ever wanted was to be reunited with his family. It was horrible. So whenever I hear AI, that's what I think of. But so I'm really happy that it's not possible. I'm glad it's not possible, because it shouldn't.
Well,
it truly shouldn't be.
sorry to say that it may not be possible in the way I described, but you should worry about it, because they're programming stuff that is going to be dangerous. I think, Wug, you wanted to say something.
Yeah, well, what you should do is listen to the last hour of that. We did the same thing with super spreaders, and then myself. You can listen to the Dr. West's thing where he says, the facts aren't the facts, which I think was very good to sort of like get the scientific method out there of just how you do high level sort of thinking about stuff. But what I sort of pumped the space about, which of course is an after space. So there's two components to this one too, Beanaroo, which is if you want to know any more, if you need to know any more about the death certificates and all the stuff that John's been doing here, well, that's what we were covering with Dr. Wesley. And of course, the way I advertised the space was, we'll debunk AI in 10 minutes. But yes, everything has to be programmed. So your understanding of the mechanism has to be programmed. So if we are going to get equivalence or superiority to our own mind, we have to understand everything. And when we understand that we're not as far ahead as what we think we are, which seems to be our problem here, is we have hubris, right? We've lost our humility. We think that we're gods on earth and all this other stuff. And this is just not correct. It's, what do you call it? It's like an ad agency has gotten a hold of science. It's like, oh, science can do everything, and it's all figured out. It's like we're living in a 1960s popular mechanics episode, when none of that shit happened, when they said in the year 2000 we'll have floating cars and all the rest of it, right? I don't see any of that. So,
Well, and I think she answered her question right in the beginning of what she said. Afraid
we
of,
did get
and
Sue Spider up. Usually some good comments out of the Spider there. If you want to chime in.
Sure, I'll talk. I have a question for Mr. E, but a little bit about AI. When people talk about AI, what they generally mean is what we call GAI, general AI, which means like you've trained up this computer, robot, or whatever, and it can simulate, human or even animal intelligence where it learns and grows and stuff like that. But that's simply not where we are with AI today, right? Like, where we are with AI is if we've got like 1,000 humans all doing something with some data and they can extrapolate some insight, we've basically just automated that. That's what we are. So AI is very good at predicting things based on some data that is already existing. So the example I used last time was AlphaGo and playing Go. It's a very finite game. It's got an incredible search space. Like you have, 361 positions you can play. So to figure out the total branch, you have to take 361 multiplied by 360 multiplied by, basically down to 180. And that's a huge number, probably more than all the atoms in the universe, kind of thing, right? So it's incredibly hard to navigate that as a human, right? Um, but that's not, like this, and they've studied this. They looked at people who play Go, and they're really smart, right? But it doesn't correlate with any other intelligence. They're just really good at playing Go, right? It's not like they're financial wizards or something, or they can read a science paper with no basis and just understand that better than anyone else who's been studying it for a while. So AI is more marketing right now than what it is. Its power comes from the fact that we've kind of unlocked a lot of hardware and software technology. Like mostly it's hardware. Like even when you look at the algorithms, like we're using stuff from the 70s and the 60s. Like that's a long time ago in terms of what we're actually using. Um, so anyways, that's my AI question, or my talk about AI. But I had a question for Mr. E. You're talking about Jupyter notebooks, and I'm somewhat familiar with them. And I do know that there's some public servers where you can host like the notebooks itself. So if we can, I don't know if John's data is public or whatever the parameters are, but if the data can be siphoned from some source, some server, right? Anybody can spin up a Jupyter notebook and start analyzing like some small part of it. And then the nice thing about that is the notebook is usually like public, right? So anybody else who doesn't know, everything about Julia or whatever can go in and like tweak a number or two to kind of like, figure out what they want to do. And I guess my question is, are there any either free or cheaply paid server locations we can stick up these notebooks, running in whatever it is, Python, R, Julia, and so on?
Yeah, so there's a couple. There's some that allow you to just view a notebook, but there are also some that allow you to load the notebook and then, continue to run it. So there are things like mybinder.org and cocalc.com and, a few others. I'd have to just, look at what the best one is right now. But like Colab from Google allows an online Jupyter notebook environment. These are great methods. The other thing is, let's say if you were to go and look at MIT, so I do it primarily through the Julia language, and so in data science you've got R, statistics great, but relatively slow, so but really strong in the stats background, and Python, and then Julia. Those are really your primary data science languages, unless you go a little bit deeper on the maths or the other side. So and most of these notebooks can run any of them. Typically, right? You can run a kernel, for any of those in there, except for Pluto, which is specific to Julia. But yeah, I would be happy to collaborate with anyone on this. Put data in a notebook, or the same thing with the SQL. That can all be done and integrated to the notebook. One of the neat things about them is with Pluto notebooks, they can be made interactive. So you can actually have sliders or other things for a variable if you have a model and say, oh, what if the R value went up, and slide it over and, kind of do some scenario stuff. So I did have some comments on the AI, if that answers your question satisfactorily.
Can we start a group DM? Can you guys just start a group DM and include me on that, and I'll try to pull out some other fancy pantses on that database stuff, and then yeah, you go ahead on the AI comments if you wanted to.
Please include me on that too, please.
Yeah, Seuss, that was Seuss talking, so I followed you back, so you should be able to DM me. That's great. I'll be glad to help. I won't be able to pick it up until early next week, but I'd be more than happy to jump in with y'all. And then on the AI side, to the question that was asked, I think, there's a lot of fear about it, right, with AGI, artificial general intelligence, and whatever. But I think the other, fear that's maybe legitimate is just around, the productivity side and the impact it's going to have on people's careers or industries or things like that. I mean, just to give a specific example, today I was doing some web coding, and, I wanted to do some custom CSS specifically for tablet and phone orientations. And so I was like, I got to, call that out separate, whatever. And it's not something I normally do. So it'd be a Slack or, some search for a little bit to find it. And so what I did instead is in ChatGPT, I just said, generate CSS for a CSS class named that defines top and bottom borders and top and bottom padding for desktop, tablet, and mobile. And boom, it gave me all the sections, and I wouldn't have known to do something called at media only screen and max width 767 pics, blah, 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 with all the formatting. And I just copied that, pasted it into my style CSS sheet, and I was playing with it and adapting it from there to get the final layouts I wanted, on my modules. And I was like, that just saved me 45 minutes or an hour. So those are the impacts that I think, are going to be interesting.
Yeah, I think there's going to be definite change over that. The one that we've been, I've heard a bunch of old coders, sort of the guys that tweet like once every 3 years, that sort of come out of the woodwork, is the Copilot. Have you guys tried that? GitHub Copilot or Microsoft Copilot or whatever?
Yeah, that's another great example. Go ahead.
I think both Super Spreaders and Brightscroll I see down there also use AI to help with their video editing, and it saves like days of work basically. They use it to get it to figure out all the text, and then they can search the text, and then they could cut out sections, and it's just very productive if you use it that way.
Which is where
Great. I'm going to look for that Super Spreaders. Go ahead, John.
It's just where people get confused, though. You're talking about a powerhouse data management, data sorting, data handling tool. And I think in the back of most people's minds, when they hear AI, they think sentience and intent and all that. And that's just, I know Zink and I talked about it at one point. The thing that I would be more concerned about is more of the cybernetic approach, with technology blended with the human mind, because the human mind, it's not going to be outdone by man. I just don't see that happening. I know that the raw horsepower might be sorting through data, doing the grunt work, but the aping of creativity, I don't buy it yet.
Yeah, that's why I spoke earlier to say, real AI, the way people think of AI, just ain't real. So people who are into software and understand what's out there and what's being called AI, it's a whole different animal. Regular lay people just they get they misunderstand what AI means, I think.
Yeah, I agree. And one thing right before the AI thing really kind of took off there is I'm hoping we're heading towards a meritocracy with handling data. So, like we all know, the government sucks at providing us with the answers that we want in relation to the information you've been going through, John. Like, just their role maybe is just like have that raw data there for us, and we'll find that meritocracy of who can find the answers for us without having to pay all these overdrawn salaries and benefits and all that stuff for no result.
All right, what are we talking about next? Let's get off the AI, unless if that's where you guys really want to go. I'm out of here.
No, John, can I ask a question about the stroke specifically, given you've looked at this so much, and I'm glad we're bringing it back to this, is I think one of the things I was particularly searching for that led me around this whole stroke thing that I mentioned with the flow chart and the tables and such. And by the way, Wog, if I could just maybe DM you that, and then you could put it to the Nest or something, because I can't send the link to that paper to John directly if you do want it, John. But what I was going to ask is I got the sense that, let's say through COVID itself, right, you didn't have any stories of people dropping suddenly, let's say here in the US, right? It wasn't like, people were getting COVID and then stroking out. I think we were estimating that was more something to do with microclotting or other things that might be more associated with the vaccines. Is that a general safe kind of framing, do you think?
Yeah, I kind of didn't follow what you were saying. You're saying I didn't look at 2020 and I only looked at 20.
I'm not saying you whatsoever. I'm asking if in general with your research, you noticed that, let's say just for COVID, right? Like let's say someone gets COVID, they've not been vaccinated, or it's not like we were seeing tons of strokes just with coronavirus, right? Like just with COVID.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I can go through it right now with you. I've got it on the screen. So I-63 cerebral infarction type of stroke. 2020 is not up. 2021 is not up. 2022 is through the roof. I don't know why. It's 2022 cerebral infarction is crazy.
Yeah, so that gets at the point that the original, like COVID, or else, back to the long COVID, which I would agree with you is probably irrelevant, right? Is that this is more likely something else that's the etiology behind it, right? Not, getting. So people were getting COVID and then they were ending up on a ventilator. They were ending up, whatever, breathing issue. It wasn't people. Oh, I got COVID and up, crash face down on the floor, right?
So very, very so few that we don't know them. We don't even know there's so few of them. But I'm just saying it did happen, but it was so little. Now I'm looking at encephalitis, myelitis, and encephalomyelitis right now. G04. That's also a type of CVST. And 2020 was up, but there were an extra 8,000 deaths. So it was up by 4. I mean, 4 total, 4 people. So out of the 8,000 extra deaths, there were 4 extra G04s. But okay, well, all cause went down. COVID went down, cut in half. COVID was cut in half year over year from 2020 to 21. But there was another 4 in 2021. Not another 4. I mean, 4 plus the 4. It's up 8 from where it should be. So there's a substantially more. It's 13% excess in 2021. So I mean, you can look at the graphs and make your own deduction, but yes, COVID goes up, but there were all cause deaths were up, I don't know, 13-14%. That's a hell of a lot. It's over 8,000 extra people died in 9 weeks, and it just carries with it a whole bunch of weird strokes and heart attacks and all kinds of stuff. And so the 2020 numbers with all these other causes are just jacked. They're just, all the numbers are up. But for 2021 to be more, that's a signal. I mean, it should never be more because all cause in COVID went down. I don't know if you want to hear any more. I mean, I got intracranial.
Yeah, no,
intraspinal
that's great examples, and so that's generally supportive of, because now bringing it back to some, all the sports folks or people that have, been pushing themselves physically that then, end up with a massive stroke and it's sudden, right? And I'd be interested to see if you thought that there were, kind of the heart attack thing different versus the stroke, right? Like something that would be go ahead.
I think it's the same thing, except it's gender. There's a great propensity for it to be gender specific.
Yep.
Somewhere around 65% of these strokes I'm finding are female, and 35 male. I mean, I'm off by 1 or 2%. I can't remember what it was, but it's around 65-35. Whereas if you go the other way with heart, it's more male. And I mean, I have.
That's interesting.
I have a guess for it. I mean, I ran track in high school, and to watch the kids come out for track the first time is hilarious because they say, okay, do a quarter mile, just run around the track as fast as you can. And we watch them and we're all laughing like, is it going to be before or after 200 meters? Well, all the new guys are going to be before 200 meters. They hit the wall. You've heard the term. It's real. You hit the wall and the arms and legs just start flailing all over the place because they can't get their body in check. They're not tuned to maintain form when they lose all the adrenaline burst, which happens around 200 meters. Girls don't have that at all. There is no wall. They don't have that everything falls apart thing that goes on that boys have, where if you're a disciplined runner, you have to just maintain form, even though everything feels weird and you're not running as fast, but just keep form. And so due to that adrenaline, if you notice a lot of the guys dropping on the fields, they're not dropping like as they're walking around or as they're training or as they're running around generally. They're dropping after peak performance when they make a drive to the hoop, when they're challenged for the ball in soccer, when in football it's you do a hard play and then just a little bit after the hard play, you drop. So it's when you hit peak performance, you stress out your system. So whatever was damaged, and maybe it was damaged a month before, but when you hit that peak performance is when everything goes haywire. That's what I'm seeing, and that's in men.
Yeah, and that's what you would expect, that if there's something close to or ready to be dislodged or or something else, those are the things that are going to drive it. And then from there, the cascade's very sudden with stroke, right? Just within a few beats through the circulatory system. But I'm not a doctor. But anyway, so what this gets at is it looks like, the sudden stroke, the face plants are more associated, with a jab or something, right? Now, I don't know. I mean, you see a lot of pointing. It's the mRNA, these. I don't know. I think it is equally as likely it's lipid nanoparticles or it's, graphene oxide or graphene dioxide or, something else like that that's then causing the cascade of problems that then leads to a dislodged clot with a stroke, right? And so this is where I'm going in my logic is that, these strokes and, sudden deaths, the face plants are more associated with the jab, with whatever the reason is behind it or multiple cofactors, right? Given that, I want to then extrapolate back to the early phase of all of this where we saw, some of these same people face planting in the street in China, right? And so that was late 2019, beginning of 2020, right? And so my thinking that I thought about later or more recently is that if the face plants are more associated with a longer term effect with something like a vaccine, as opposed to simply the coronavirus disease, right? Contracting whatever that is, right? Then it would indicate that way back then, those people may have succumbed to tests of a vaccination or to that type of thing versus the actual COVID. It could have been longer back, or there could be other things going on. So that's just, off the wall, after 11, whatever. But that's the type of thing in my logic I'm trying to keep open, that, it's pretty clear this has been a DoD type operation that's been running for years. So how far back does this go, and what's been going on, and who is testing what when?
Yeah, there's a lot you said that I agree with. I don't disagree with very much. I'm no biologist. I'm no doctor. I've talked to a lot of them, and I've listened to a lot of them on private calls. Big name people, and they don't know. The answer is they don't know. If they don't know, I don't know. But my opinion is that there's a lot of short-term stuff when people just drop after they get the vax or within a day. I believe the mechanism of action is the LNP. I believe it's a phospholipid issue. The polyethylene glycol, they're reacting. It's transfecting. Their body's attacking their endothelium. It's not necessarily a clot stroke. It could be a bleed. It could be, you don't know where those LNPs go, but wherever they go, if they transfect the endothelium too much in one place, you have a rupture in either a capillary or a vein or even an artery. Or even your aorta. Aortas are getting fucking blown. Excuse my language. Aortas are getting blown out. You're getting aortic aneurysms happening, and I knowledge of fluid dynamics with the curvature there, and the way things slow down as they the velocity of a fluid through something slows down as it approaches the surface. You think everything's moving through it at the same rate. It's not. As you get to the edges, the molecules are slowing down. There's all kinds of equations with regard to fluid dynamics on that, and that would
Right
make
down
sense.
to zero against the surface. Yeah, you're spot on.
Exactly. Yeah. So, there's all kinds of stuff that they're not looking at, and everybody's talking about the spike. Now, people here who know me, they know I keep railing against this. Like, Jesus Christ, you get 99% of the attention with the spike, when probably 70% of people are dying with onset of symptoms before the spike can possibly be expressed. I mean, the earliest time is 6 hours. And you got people, I just did a whole presentation on people coming down with stuff within minutes. They're throwing up in minutes, and then they're dead in a few days. But it takes time to die. So they're misattributing the spike.
Yeah, that's anaphylactic shock, or other
Exactly.
things. I mean, think about the original nurse who was the poster nurse who, the very first day. Remember the Tiffany?
Dover.
Tiffany Dover, right? And and that was NDAs, pay up the whole thing, craziness, right? So I appreciate your comment also to separate out the ones that happen immediately or very quickly, which they knew about, which is why they classified it only 2 weeks post-vaccination to be classified as vaccination, which was the whole other data trick.
No, but that started a long time ago. That's not new to C19. That's an old trick of their book.
That delivery mechanism of the LNP, it's a friggin' disaster. It doesn't matter. Everybody's talking about the spike. Okay, the spike's bad. I get it. It's hemotoxic, cardiotoxic, and you have long-term effects, and it's killing a lot of people. But the damned LNP itself, the delivery mechanism, it's deadly. It's more deadly. And they're not talking about it. Even people on our side are not talking about it. And so what are they going to do? Oh, well, here comes your next vaccine. Don't worry, it doesn't have the spike. It's coded for flu, or it's coded for RSV, or it's coded for whatever, the HPV, BLM, LGBT. And it doesn't matter because it's the damn delivery mechanism. It's the lipids. It's a lottery. You want to buy a lottery ticket where your chances are 1 in 1,000, and when you win, you die? No, thank you. The whole fucking thing. They knew that that delivery mechanism was bad. The only way they could sell this thing was through this government whole, everybody's got to get one thing. They knew it was bad.
It's so glad to hear you say this, John, because you watch this focus in this direction, and it's like, maybe they just sat there and realized, the mRNA doesn't work, the whole thing, like Dr. Lee's thing about nasal passages, and like this is within the body and this is exterior. If it's the whole thing, I mean, maybe they're like, okay, that gig's up. But I completely agree, with everything you've just said, and it's just great to hear other, people saying that, because there seems to be this mass formation around just the mRNA, which is causing people to look less like with what you're talking about, which I think is spot on. And then the other thing is so highly censored is anything around the graphene, right? And to your point about fluid flow, even with slow fluid flow, what graphene would do inside the veins and stuff is take those very smooth, surfaces where you're not going to get biofilm buildup and other things, and put micro scratches in it, similar to what diatomaceous earth would do to an insect, right? And now you've got sites where, these microclots and other things can form, or you continue to get abrasion from them through, particularly interesting fluid flow locations like you mentioned, where you might get these particles impinging on a wall with greater frequency or something like that, causing a thinning, which leads to a rupture under pressure later in an extreme physiological state, right? So, that's all pretty solid logic. It's just good to hear you expressing that as a possible path that should at least just be considered.
Yeah,
I don't think you even.
Sorry.
Sorry, I was saying you don't even have to go to the graphene route. I mean, okay, so one of the things in health that has been really, I guess, like it's kind of like fake information is that it's about cholesterol. So doctors tell you that cholesterol is bad for you and so on and so forth. Um, but it's kind of the opposite. Like cholesterol, um, it's a precursor to a lot of things that have, that your body needs to fix yourself. So one of the things that it does is when you have inflammation in your endothelials, what happens is, cholesterol goes there to kind of like patch it up, and then it creates this bump, which eventually they call thrombosis, right? So you got this hardening of the arteries. But the reason for it is because of inflammation. So you have all these LNP particles floating around, and the biggest surface area it's going to encounter when it hits your bloodstream is the inside of your arterial and venous walls. So, and they're fat, and they go everywhere. So they go into every cell. So the cells it's going to encounter the most is going to be your endothelials, and they're highly inflammatory. Guess what your body does to it, right? It's going to react, and it's going to start patching all those things up. It's going to, create a layer. So if you follow Fat Emperor, Ever Cummings, he did something.
So you should unpack that a little bit for people that don't know, because so you should maybe say where the endothelial cells are, and then if that gets attacked, then what is it actually doing, and just a slight
Yeah.
more explanation.
Yeah, so basically your endothelial cells are, the lining of your blood vessels, right? So, um, and it wants to be smooth, right? So you got a pump system, you got a heart pumps through these pipes. You don't want like non-smooth pipes, right? So your endothelial cells have the role of trying to be smooth. But if anything happens, if it starts inflaming, it wants to kind of patch that up, right? Um, and so the inflammation itself, just the inflammation itself, can cause a huge amount of problems. And your body has mechanisms to deal with it, but it usually doesn't deal with the fact that you have a system-wide, inflammation all over your body, right? And it might localize in certain areas and so on. So that alone is going to cause heart problems. Um, And then of course there's other kind of theories like Dr. Joseph Lee has this idea that if if a lot of antibodies are created, and so this is for the cases that are like 3 weeks later or something like that, it thickens the blood, right? So you have a condition where your endothelials are inflamed, your body's starting to patch them up, build up, thicken the wall, try to you know handle the inflammation, and you've got this thicker blood, right? So you got the situation where it just cascades into a lot of different problems, and the the LMPs and and all that, it all contributes to that at different time scales and for different people at different times, right? So it's like we're actually looking at multiple causes of problems that all compound on each other, and you don't even have to look at graphene oxide or the things that you know is really hard for us to find or prove right now. Just with what we know already, it's already really bad.
Yeah, those are really good points. I agree, and I hadn't considered as much the body's own production, like a scarring type thing. In the heart, I did because that's what happens when you get heart damages. It scars. It doesn't replace those cells the same. But I hadn't considered it, inside the veins and the other areas. That makes a lot of sense that it's, the body doing it itself, not just, exogenous biofilms that are building up, or that type of thing. So that's interesting
Well,
input.
it's the body attacking itself. It's the T cells attacking a foreign substance in the cells. The cells are saying, wait a minute, I thought you were like me. I thought you were the lipids that I have on the outside of my cell. But you're not. You got this weird friggin' peg thing going on, so I'm going to have you killed. And so the T cells attack the endothelial cells. It scores the inside of your blood vessels. And then you get bleeds, and then where you have bleeds, you have clots, and it's this terrible system where if it's too much in one place, you're screwed. But I did want to. I jumped in because I didn't want to be associated with the graphene thing. I don't. I like Ryan Cole. I think he's an honest dude, and he ran mass back on it and didn't find any graphene. Maybe it's in some and not others. I don't think so. I'm not buying the whole graphene thing. I'm not buying the 5G thing. I'm just not there. So, but
what about chemtrails, John? I'd like to throw in chemtrails.
Yeah, no, I saw some chemtrails, but then I was able to fix my bowels, so no more chemtrails.
Lieutenant, if you don't mind me just following up on that, you mentioned, specifically there with Ryan Cole, Dr. Cole, and I don't know if you're familiar with, like the third week in January in Stuttgart, where they had the COVID conference with McCullough and Cole and Malone and other folks there. And there was also Dr. Astrid Stuckelberger there. Are you familiar with kind of that scene that went down?
I know he got stuck with some people and he didn't vet them, and he ended up being part of something he didn't want to be part of. I don't have the details on it. I just remember the look on his face in the video.
Yeah, she like yelled at him or whatever. We got a new speaker up here, Lieutenant. What's your name there? Why don't you pop in here for a sec?
Lieutenant, obviously. But I kind of echo what John.
Is anybody hearing this guy clearly? I think you got some kind of connection issue going on there, bro. Maybe try it over again. Tap your mic and try over.
Let's see. Is that any better?
Yeah, there.
Okay. Had my headset in. All right. So yeah, to John's point, I heard the same thing about the graphene oxide, and from multiple different sources saying the same thing, that they studied it and didn't find that in there. So I'm not sure if that's a place to talk about, but everyone has the ability to follow their own intuition about what they've found as far as evidence. John, kind of to the point of what you said about the things that you found, and I think I've heard you speak in another space, but I don't know if we've talked. But would you be willing to kind of do some video and put it on Rumble or somewhere that kind of walks people through the process? I know FOIA requests for each state is going to be a little unique, but in general they're typically the same. But then also, like, how did you, you know, catalog, and how did you identify information? Maybe find some working groups for each state that would be willing to seek out the data and then put it all together, and then eventually put it all collectively. That's kind of one question I have for John. And then to the point about, you know, what we were just discussing, George Webb had an interesting theory, which I kind of agree with. I just had run through it in my own head, but basically saying that you know, the vaccines themselves and the places that they're manufactured, if there was some kind of rupturing of the vaccine and in the manufacturing process, this could cause some issues. Because my personal opinion, maybe anecdotal, is just that, you know, there hasn't been there's been a lot of people that have been injured, have died, it appears, from the vaccine, from all the information we have, but it's not as many as, you know, it would seem. Like, all of my close personal friends that I know that got vaccinated, so far, at least, they haven't admitted to it, have not had any major serious side effects from it. I have one possibly, but that's questionable. And so I was curious about that, and if anybody had any thoughts on that theory, that it's possibly the process of the vaccinations, and it's only happening in select groups of the vaccines.
If you're saying that there's an uneven distribution of vaccine harm, then for sure, right? I mean, whenever you look at distribution of anything, if you take a high enough view, everything smooths out, right? But when you look at any individual, you know, batch or something like that, then you're going to find that there's going to be problems. I think Dr. Richard Ursel talks about this. He's familiar with, you know, manufacturing process of, you know, drug and drug related things, and he says that basically when you're doing it at the beginning, you're going to be pretty bad, right? So the bad batches are actually the good batches in terms of, like, you know, the quality of materials, because they don't have the bad stuff in it, which is the LNP and the mRNA. So, you know, what we could be seeing is early on there was just really poor QC, right? And that's where a lot of weirdness got in. And I can't remember which space and who talked about it, but they were talking about how you were magnetized, and there was actually some, you know, contamination in some of the batches that allowed you to, you know, have this kind of magnetizing effect. And it kind of went away, like those stories. We saw it on the news and, you know, social media for a while. And then after, you know, 3 months, it went away because they basically cleaned up that process. So, you know, there's that to consider.
Yeah, I've never believed the magnetism bullshit. Sorry. I mean, there's just not enough mass to create that much of an magnetic field. Even if you were to put magnetite in the LNPs, you can drag them around with an external field, but I mean, it's not going to do anything next to your skin. That's all. I'm sorry, I just can't get into that shit. That's all BS.
I think what we
That
got
thing
to
on the
realize.
magnetism, I agree completely. Good point.
I think what we have to realize, guys, is there's going to be very many nudges to try to take us off the path, and that's why I've been sort of backing out of just running a general space. There's lots of those going on. There's lots of vac injury, all the shit we've been doing for 2 years here, all the stuff we used to cover, you know, every little thing. There's lots of them now. If we keep just drive on the data, and I know this seems confusing for a lot of people, but if we just drive on the data, okay, so we got the data here, let's drive on that. There's going to be lots of these little takeoffs, right? And so what I've said to people before with the 5G and the chemtrail, I've just been saying, look, you know what? Once we get this thing solved, we get these shots stop going into people's arms and all the rest of it. Let's focus on that. But that's the hero move here, right? The fucking yogic flyer asshole move is to cleanse your chakras while a grizzly bear's coming at you, right? So you didn't protect the village at all. You just let the fucking thing go because you wanted to do your shit. It's the 5G nanobot stuff. Again, it's another AI fear movement. We've got people afraid of AI. We've got people afraid of the skies. Stu Peters and his stupid fucking venom in the water thing. We did weeks and weeks and weeks of spaces calming people down that didn't want to drink the water out of their tap. We had to get a biochemist expert lady in here to tell us like, oh, well, actually venom is a very unstable compound, blah, 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 basically breaks down in the presence of air. So all of this different stuff because people were so freaked out. And that's why I don't view those people as friends of ours, right? I don't view all these things because we've gone through it with people. Anything that's creating fear and division. People are afraid of AI. People are afraid of, their cell phone thing. They're afraid of the sky. They're afraid of the water. They're afraid of the food. I mean, that amount of fear, guys, it's like someone was hitting on it today in another room, and I tried to request a mic, but of course, lots of people in the interwebs here, especially in these spaces, are pissed off of me. I get daily attacks because I'm a, controlled opposition or whatever, which is what I'm basically talking about a little bit here, is some of this controlled opposition stuff. You're gonna have to like use some discernment, right? Okay, even if is it possible? It's possible, but it's so far out of the league of probabilities. But there's also self-evident harm being happening right in the middle of this stick. I don't need to extend myself way out to, the aliens have landed and they're controlling Joe Biden through a mind worm and the ice wall in Antarctica and the glass dome that's over the earth. And do you know what I mean? Like, it's too goddamn much, right? For the flat earthers there's just one easy way to do this, because we debunked, I believe we debunked AI in 10 minutes there the other day with a neuroscientist. If you're in space or you're in free fall and you and you put a blurb of water out, does it create a flat disk or does it go into the least amount of surface area? It goes in the least amount of surface area. So there's your solved flat earth. This one, maybe we'll rename this space before we go. So I don't know how long we want to keep this going. It's pretty high level right now, but let's keep it going for a while anyways. But I don't think like going down the side shoots, we can, but it's just a waste of time, right? It's just, I don't know. Any other thoughts on that stuff?
I got a quick question for John. I don't know how public your data can be. Like, is it like, I know you can analyze it right now, but can anyone else? Like, could we stick it up on a server somewhere and then have other people look at it?
Yeah, I wanted to do that months ago for a long time until I saw Posobiec's talking about the difference between possessing something and transmitting it and the laws against it. And so I'm kind of nervous. I think, was it you? Who was I just talking to on? I was just chatting with one of the guys here. I thought it was you on a direct message. I'm kind of nervous about transmitting it to anybody because I think I have it legally. I don't know.
Yeah, I think you have it legally in possession and you can legally analyze it. I think that's true. But my question has always been, can you give it to someone else? I don't know.
Yeah, that's what I'm nervous about. I don't want to be in violation of a felony,
Yes.
Well,
So
if you have the full data set, like the de-anonymized, like the full,
I got the full, yeah.
Yeah, so then if you anonymized it, you're dealing with a different entity than having that. So for whatever reason you've gotten that, I definitely consult a lawyer. I mean, you don't want to find yourself in the shit in the problematic, right?
Yeah, I mean, I told them before they gave it to me, redact whatever you need to redact, and so I thought I had transferred responsibility to them, but then transmitting it is a whole different animal. Nooney's had her hand up, or his hand up, I don't know, his, for a long time now. So I just feel bad. I think we should go to Nooney. Are you there?
Yeah. Hey, how you guys doing? And one thing about, can you mute your mic, please? I got feedback. The one thing about the level of data, how comfortable do you feel, ask yourself, putting that data in front of a judge? Now, are you going to go to a judge and say, magnetizing, whatever, show me the data, right? It's a hypothesis, nothing more, speculation. Maybe it's true, maybe it's not. Show us the data. John's got data. He has to present in front of a judge. Now, myself, according to Bill C11, or excuse me, Law C11, I'm an outlaw for just publishing the Red Pill Starter Pack. So the standard I'm using to put information in there is anything I feel comfortable putting in front of a judge should I be charged with spreading misinformation. That's it. And by the way, the intermediate pack is live, and I keep adding and editing as new stuff comes along. My DMs are open. If you can please, like, if you think there's something that I could use, because there's also, it's a 4-part series, 1, 2, 3, and 4, with the last part having the information about, Agenda 2030, et cetera, et cetera. But the first 2 packs I wanted to put out right away because my encounter with a veteran this afternoon. And I was talking to him about this, and as he realized, I was absolutely serious. And I said, look, all of this is provable, the data's out. And the phrase I'm using now is, this is what Trudeau wants to hide from you. And that really, that was it. And I could see the expression on his face change, and I could see in his eyes like the concern and the worry. And I said, hang on, there's doctors you can call right here in Canada. You can get telehealth, and there's treatments and protocols, and there's stuff you can start doing right now to mitigate this. And, I pulled up the app and I showed, like, I did it right there. I hit the share button, generated the QR code, he scanned it, and now he has it. And for what I'm putting on there, it has to be something I can put in front of a judge if and when I am charged for whatever, spreading information, being an outlaw. I don't care. It's there because I would love to go through each one of those links in front of a judge. Because if they're going to charge me for all of the stuff that I have on there, I get to go through each link and prove that it's not hyperbole, it's not, bullshit, that this is indeed actual evidence. And so we'll see about that, but it's making its rounds. Somebody in the Freedom Network over here shared it, and I guess it's catching off there because it is a tool, a good tool, if you're the one or the kind of person who's having this conversation with strangers that you meet and that you're talking. I always use the word pandemic, or I say there's lots of deaths, blah, 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 to break in. And then I talk about the information Trudeau does not want you to see. And right there is like the door wide open, click, boom, boom, boom. All of this stuff on the application. It's a landing pad of links. I didn't write a damn fucking thing except for the headlines. That's it. It's all information gathered in one spot. It's just a tool. And you can make your own. You can just, copy and paste some of the links from mine and make your own, pad the way you want to organize it. The whole thing is to spread the information out there. And I do have links to your Substack on there, John, under the legal case headings. And yeah, I'm behind in my legal cases. I think that's in section 3 because I've got more to add there. But yeah, it's live now, section 2. I put it in the bubble. I on my freaking iPhone, I can't get it to the bloody nest, but there it is. So remember, people, when you talk about this information, what do you feel comfortable putting in front of a judge? So separate that from the, what's provable right now with data versus the stuff that we are speculating on that is yet to be proven with data.
So I've got it up in the nest for you. I had actually your starter one there before, and just for those that don't know or aren't following along, this was something that we sort of come up with inside of a space, and then it sort of progressed in the space, and then Nooney's found the correct app now to do this. So now you have like your beginner, like red pill pack, like, oh, here's grandpa that doesn't know, whatever, anything, or here's, junior smarty pants that knows, sort of just come onto our side. Well, did you know this? And then of course they're all sort of linked in there. So super, super good. It's funny because it reminds me of sort of a thing we were working on that had a different sort of same data structure, right? These are the court cases. These are the political science sort of componentries of it and all that stuff. But like you're saying, right? It's key of how you perceive the fight, and unfortunately, when you come at it from an extreme, then we're never going to get to that middle ground. And this is a fight for the middle ground, even though people, it's tough because some people want to believe in scary stuff, right? And hitting back on what that other room was this morning, I mean, it was, the guy was basically saying, like, when are we just going to tune out of the fear, like tune out of the fear and just tune into like something else. And that's, so if we're going to confront this stuff, that we do it with data, right? And then we go on to our normal lives and we start creating stuff. It's time to get your seedlings going. It's time to get your greenhouse, shovel off the snow off the greenhouse, or build yourself a greenhouse with free glass, which we went through on one of our spaces. Go to the local glass company, go to your neighbor who's throwing out a bunch of windows, leave it up against your house if you don't know how to build. It's very simple. Or make a cold frame. I mean, it's literally that kind of thing that you can do, but it's a lot of focusing on problems and then othering our power is the main thing. Do what you can on this side of the fight, stick on the data, you're going to be okay. Then go do some real life shit, make some real life shit happen. D, welcome. What's going on?
Hey,
with you
Bob.
today?
Thanks a lot. I'm really enjoying the room. Just want to back you up with exactly what you said. This is where this is where my research is in critical thinking. That was the question that was predominant for the first year in Twitter Spaces, was why couldn't other people see this? And that was the predominant. I had some experience in critical thinking and how to activate it in students. So I went back, took some time off Twitter, and went deep dive into my research and reviewed it. And I realized that what I kind of already knew, but now I got double the research. And it's exactly what you said. There's 7 emotional states that we have. And it turns out, it's called the science of emotions. And you can look up a Dr. Pankreep. He's a neuroscientist. He was a neuroscientist. And all animals and humans are hardwired, is his theory with this. And the first 4 emotional states in our affective minds, they are the danger states, or the negative. I don't want to use the word negative, but they all have a purpose, right? But one of them, of course, is fear, right? Another one is rage, or being frustrated, pissed off. Another one is the loneliness, okay, from separation or loss. And those are the 3 primary ones that I want to focus on. And the interesting is, from my research and learning, is when a person, child or adult, is stuck or too much in one of those 3 states perpetually, it's a software problem. They cannot access their critical thinking hardware. So it never was a case that people didn't have the ability necessarily to do even basic critical thinking. Because let's face it, right? This whole, whatever you want to call it, pandemic, it really wasn't that well done from a if you really were to analyze how well they tricked us, right? It wasn't like high level stuff, right? It was pretty obvious. So then the question is, why didn't the average person with just an average ability? Well, this is the answer, is that they were caught in either fear, anger, pissed off, or loneliness, sadness, loss. And so that explains so much when we see it that way. And of course, exactly what you're saying, and why I got away from Twitter and why I came back, but also got away from the debate, is because it was everywhere you go, it was a magnet to suck us back into those same 3 states to stay. And the interesting thing is, many of the people who are stuck in these states, it's very hard to be self-aware that you're stuck in the state, because a lot of it is done subliminally through advertising, through media. But it's also just, it's hard for humans to be aware that you're stuck in a different state, right? It's a self-awareness problem. And I see this with the kids I teach. So by lowering our levels of fear, anger, and separation loss, as we lower those, we naturally have the ability to access the critical thinking side. And regardless of how we're going to get out of this, you're exactly right. Regardless out of how we get out of this or what's best, there's no way anyone can argue against that. The best way to get out of this is to try to stay as calm, less too much pissed off, and less too disconnected, and to be able to have access to our full analytical, reflective, imaginative, creative, critical thinking activities. It's no difference if either of us are a pilot in a battle. You can't be caught up in the fear, even if you're in a most dangerous situation. You can't be caught up with too much anger. Every person knows that, right? So that's the self-awareness that I bring, right? And to sort of back you up, is that is the research. It's clear, it's straightforward, and it's a balance of trying to like you say, but I don't think many people are aware how when they are caught up in the affective zone. My best example is driving, like especially in the city, and you could be really calm and someone cuts you off and you react. You have that reaction of anger and pissed off, and whatever you do back, or you just say something, or you curse. That's proof right there. You're caught up in the affective state, unconscious, and your unconscious is coming out without realizing. So anyways, I just wanted to put that out there, and so support what you're saying, and it's the way to move forward, right? And it's also the way to understand where the people in the middle are, right? Is that if we're going to reach the people in the middle, somehow we have to find ways to lower their overall fear, loss, and anger, frustration. And that can be done maybe on an individual level. I don't have any great answers right yet for how to accomplish it on a group level, but at least I feel like I've identified the way forward. It's a psychological operation, and therefore we have to understand the basic workings of the science of our emotions, our affective state, because that's what got us locked in, and that's why we're here. Thanks.
Yep. Anxiety was one of the things there that when you were listed off that made me think of that. And I sort of have a follow-up question for you, but obviously Nuni's got her hand up, so we'll go here to her in a sec. But I wanted to give you guys an update because I did speak of during the throes of the pandemic. I had another father came over for a play date. So there was 2 fathers here and 3 kids, Mike, everyone, the 3 little boys, and then the 3 fathers. And this guy was freaking out to the point where he was argumentative, and then he finally got on to the COVID stuff. And I said, dude, I'm not buying it. And then he's like, well, what about the vaccine? I was like, I'm not buying that either. And I've got the receipts, I got the data, but it didn't matter. But what I was talking about, because this guy was in a state of affairs that was, if this was the street at 3 a.m. outside of a bar, I wouldn't turn my back on him. And I actually didn't turn my back on him in this situation. He was vibrating to such a high level that it brought back, like Desmond says, and I do want to touch on Desmond with D later after Noonie speaks, or after the other people that want to speak on this. This guy was so vibrating, all of the fear and the panic that had worked its way into his head by watching the TV, like a skilled TV watcher, that he was basically nuts. And I had to keep my eye on him to be ready to get into fisticuffs with them, right? That's how crazy it was. Anyways, add on to it. I just found out recently this guy was an adamant vacker. He was like, why would you do it? You're putting grandma at risk. You're putting other people at risk. Would not even, like I said, if I just said I was against it, he was already in that mode. No data necessary. So anyways, fast forward. I just found out this week that he is, his little boy came up to me and says, yeah, he was so proud of himself. He came up and says, you know what? It's day 264 of my daddy after my daddy's heart operation. And it broke my heart. The little kid said that to me, and I was like, I was just sort of taken aback. I was like, wait a second, what? And he's like, yeah, it's day 264 since my dad had his heart operation. I just thought about it for a second. I was like, oh, for Christ's sakes, like this is it. Do you know what I mean? Like the more that I talk to people, and now I'm seeing interesting signs from other parents when I have to go to these parental things like sports things or whatever, meetings and all this other shit. People are signaling that they're ready to talk. On the other side too, people are signaling that they're looking at this with, critical eyes and seeing what's going on. So the virtue signaling has sort of turned to this underground sort of like, hey, I'm going to show you that I'm not a part of the mass whatever. But anyways, let's go to Noonie there. So there's the update. The guy that was a super vacker is now obviously got something wrong, and I was wondering why he's being so nice to me after that. So there you go. Noonie, go ahead.
Yeah, in the master's level pack, I have the research done by the firms who tested the various messaging techniques they would use on focus groups so that they could refine exactly which messaging would have the most effect. Incidentally, the killing grandma, that was used globally. It was even used in Japan. I mean, just they have the research on the people. Okay, when you think of the population as a bell curve, they've got the people in the middle. I mean, with all of the data that they have on people in the middle from all of the apps that you put on your phone, where they collect data, sell data, aggregate data, the whole 9 yards. They don't have the outliers on either side. AI can't figure us out because, guys in, Silicon Valley don't realize that people like me want to buy moose sinew. So I'll never get an ad for moose sinew on my feed. They don't even know if it exists. But they'll have everything for in the middle. So that those papers are included in the master's level, and that's where I'm got these documents on it. It was deliberate. They did research it. Remember, they have years of data going back with how to manipulate people, and that was deployed. Period. It was.
Why aren't we leveraging Chat GPT on this then? Noonie?
Oh,
No,
don't
I'm serious
even
though.
get me
I'm serious.
started. Oh my
No,
God.
but why don't we leverage it back at them? This is where I don't understand. People are like, oh my God, AI is coming. It's like
No, it's
there
not.
is use case for Chat GPT. No, there's still use cases for it. If you know how to prime it, you can work around and it will answer things objectively if
Yeah.
you know how to do it.
The guys programming that have
Yeah.
limited life experience. It's only as good as the
Yeah, but
program.
it's not about what they make courtyards. All they can do is make courtyards. They give it giant data
Yeah,
sets, right?
exactly.
So we already played with it. We already moved around all of those. We did 36 hours straight of getting Chat GPT to write pornos. Okay, so different varying involving religious icons.
Oh my
We don't
God.
really put it out in the public because we don't want people to completely hate us from all. But to be fair, we had to use all religious icons from everywhere. So you can do it. It can be done. But it's very powerful. I mean, this is what I'm saying. So if we don't have the access to those, focus groups, but how do we deconstruct these people? And that's what's going to feed me into my
Tell them
next
the
question coming
truth.
back to
You
D.
keep telling the truth over and over and over. Remember, 1/3 will never wake up. The battleground is the 1/3 in the middle. Everybody at this point in time knows somebody who's died or is vaccine injured. Any deaths.
So then so then on that point, Noonie, how do we get the people that are on our side to not, be 5G nanobotting chemtrail, AI is sentient, like it's like a constant prevention. And then how do what do you do with those people when they want to bring that in?
Well, you
Because that's
tell
the
them,
problem
like,
I see. I see the problems on our side. The problem is on our side, the middle behind. The actual problem is prevent us to move forward in this is the victimized middle. So the people that use the terms pure blood, et cetera,
Yeah.
and they don't understand that they're hurt and they want to crap on everyone else's head
Yeah.
because they've been hurt, right?
Yeah.
So, and those people will hold on to that hurt to the
Yeah.
point where it's like, well, I want to talk about my 5G nanobot and this and everything's terrible and this is worse. And that's when so I see that as sort of the big problem here. But what's your thoughts on that?
Well, again, it's like, do they feel comfortable going into a court and talking to a judge about this if they had to, defend their stance on that for spreading misinformation? That's what it comes down to. What can you prove? What data have you got for that? Show me the data. And that's what it comes down to. What is your threshold of proof? Now, if you want to speculate, if you want to hypothesize, that's different. That's when you can go and talk about that stuff. But when it comes to waking people up, you have to have the data. You have to be able to show, look, well, here's all of these studies. You wanted peer review studies? Well, look, there's a link to 1,000 of them. How about that? And it's, again, repeating the truth over and over and over. I was in a space last night and it was really disheartening to hear the host go, I've been talking about this for 3 years. I'm sick of blah, 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 blah. And I'm thinking, this isn't for you. This is a tool for when you're waking people up, when you're having those conversations, that you can show them absolute stuff that, that this is what's published. This is what we know right now. And, there are more papers like the one from Dr. Thorpe in preprint about fertility in females and the issues regarding that. I mean, there is serious stuff. But, again, the key thing about pad number 1 is to show vaccine toxicity, but also show that there's treatment out there, that there are doctors available who are literate, who can assist them, as well as the detox protocols for both allopathic and homeopathic medications, to show that, yes, here's something you can do about it. And that's the key right now, is a lot of them need to be on these protocols, and it comes down to that. And when they go through and read it, eventually they get to that point. What else did they lie to me about? And that's where it leads into, Agenda 2030, digital identification, and after all of that's done, I want to do the other big lie, which is the carbon credits and, the green agenda and all that bollocks. But the key, tell them what you prove. Don't go talking about nanobots and shit. Fucking prove that. You can't. It's theory, it's speculation. And if that's what you feel comfortable going in front of a judge with, well, good luck to you. Which is why, I'm pretty confident. And, if they come arrest me tomorrow, I am confident. I know exactly which witnesses I would call, and and I would be able to get through every data point on those sets, because they might pick one and go, oh, that's the one that we're going to, charge her on. It's like, no, that was part of a whole data set, including this, and get to put all of that on the public record in court, and I welcome that, but that's the standard that you have to put, and keep having these conversations, keep talking to them about it, and do it in a rational manner. I mean, I was very concerned with him as I saw the look, his face, like the color drained from his face. And it was like, but hang on, here's his doctors, and we're lucky we're in Alberta. You can call a telehealth guy and they can talk to you about this, because these guys are actually literate in this stuff. They have a global network where they're always updating their databases for, new treatment therapies and things that work. Here, you can scan this QR code and take the information, boom, done, he's got it, and it comes down to that. So I agree with you wholeheartedly. Stay away from the snake venom nanobots 5G crap. All right? Go with the data that you can prove. But there's no saying that you can't go into a space and speculate and hypothesize. But until the data's there, that's all it is speculation. Over.
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. E.
Yeah, no, I'll just say real quickly on that. I mean, I agree with the, that we need to follow the data. And, like on the graphene oxide thing, I'm not saying, it's in all of them or it's in even any of them, but, I have looked at micrographs and papers, that were published on them quite reliably. 70-page document from 21 with the micrographs that show some things that are in there pretty clearly. And then we can also look and so that was also one of the comments about that is it's using micro-Raman spectroscopy, and the Dr. Ingrid that was the one that was criticized at that Stuttgart conference. It was interesting that what I heard people say, oh yeah, no, Dr. Ryan, Cole, she interrupted him, this or that. It was actually, that was the narrative that was posted. It was exactly the opposite. It was actually, he had pulled her mic 15 minutes early, with her presentation, and some of those things that I actually went back and dug into it, that the only thing out there in the public was, oh, she was rude and she went up and interrupted him, when it was actually the opposite. And what she was saying there was, you weren't using the right microscopic techniques. You don't have the expertise to look at this with your, et cetera. This is my expertise area. So
what's her
we have
expertise
to,
area? Her expertise area is self-assembled nanobots that can be activated by 5G.
I didn't even go down to the 5G route at
No,
all
but what
here.
I'm saying,
But
what I'm saying, Mr. E, is that she's the expert and she did look for this and that. So I've been on to this mass spectrometry thing for a long time. Steve did one, Cole did one, some other dudes did one, but I guess what benefit are we driving at here? I mean, do we really think that they have like the precision? I mean, this is, I don't know how to
it's not a
phrase it. I
question
mean,
if you have the precision to generate it. That's a given. We have these particles. You can order them from Sigma Aldrich. I mean, that's no problem.
are you talking
It's
about
a question.
ferrofluid? Are we talking about ferrofluid? Like, what are we talking about here? You mean
No,
graphene oxide in suspension that you can play with and you can do things,
yes,
and the
that's
precision and
right.
the amount of effort that you would have to do to align something like that in a person's body I mean, so then why don't you run us through it then? It sounds like you've gone through the fucking rabbit hole. Give us the 3-minute version, the elevator pitch of 5G nanobot. How does it work and how do we get over? There's multiple problems here, but let's go through it. Let's give it
I didn't.
5 minutes.
No, I didn't even go down the 5G route. I mean, there's plenty to look at. A typical nanoparticle fragment to, of the graphene oxide fragment. It's a platelet that, let's say, if it were 50 units across, it would only be a tenth of a unit thick, right? So, that's why I said these are like micro razor blades as well, that would get to that endothelial layer. And this is all just logical thinking or, trying to go through it to say what's possible. Now, you try to look at what's also suppressed or what information we're not allowed to look at, where the narrative's being very hard with the control. So those are areas I'm going to dig a little further into. I don't want to speak to the 5G tonight, but I certainly could do that because I spent 10 years in applied R&D at Motorola, plus looked at,
Well, this is what I'm saying. You're the perfect guy to do it with. So why don't we save that for another day and we'll go all into it? Because honestly, I feel like this is sort of in one here. I keep on trying to do these data drive ones, but I'm just getting, I'm getting a little bit burnt on the rest of it. So no. So it's fascinating. I'm glad that we did cover that. So what was your point there? I guess with what you were trying to bring into the circle, I was a little mystified there.
Just simply that you made a very hard, nope, take that off the table. No, we don't consider that. And the same thing, around, the slight that was given, in all due respect to the venoms, which that's another one that having dug into is completely legitimate to keep into scope. Looking at what's happening.
But not in the way that how it was brought up, Mr. E. Okay, like venom as an adjuvant. It's been that's world leading, new technology using shit that nature has elicited immune response for thousands, if not, I don't know what the, 500,000 years at least. You know what I mean? Like this is retarded. That so when we talk about it as an adjuvant, now that's not the problem. It's the hyperbole, right? when
Yeah.
when Brian Ardis, okay, a chiropractor that used prior to C19 had the solution to acne with a $300 set of vitamins you'd have to take to get rid of acne. Okay, he was an acne vitamin salesman. C19 came around, he was a C19 expert. Okay, then he makes this video thing, the venom in the water, whatever it was, with Stu Peters, and Stu Peters just says an offhand comment to him, like kind of like, "Well, you're not saying that there's venom in the water." And then Brian Ardis says, "Well, I don't know." And then it's me and Zinc and Mikey and TR6 and a whole bunch of other Spaces hosts that have to sit here on Twitter Spaces and listen to grandmas out there scared shitless to drink their water because they think there's venom in it from some fucking. So there's a real world consequence of this hyperbole, guys. And if we want to win, then that use case stuff, that's like out the window. Like that's what we call critical thinking to the nth degree and zero strategic thinking, right? That's like the idea of efficacy, efficiency versus efficacy. Are you being efficacious at what you're doing? Or are you being 100% efficient at a task that is not taking you anywhere in the direction of where you're trying to win? But I know what you're up to, Mr. E. I hear what you're saying, and you're correct. I did take things off the table, but you don't have no idea how many hours I spend on these spaces and how many, I'm used to it, but let's take an hour and let's go right down the
No,
rabbit
no, we don't
hole.
want to go. We don't want to go there
Not
now.
today.
And also,
Not today.
yeah. But also, I hope I didn't bring any hyperbole to it or say anything so definitive or provocative
No, you're
things.
just
And I tried
pointing
to.
out that I'm the one being, cutting off, not a free speech absolutionist. And I can tell you after running thousands of hours of these rooms, I just can't afford to be because I will not run them.
Yeah.
I will not run them
No,
anymore. I've told people that. I
I
will
hear
just
you.
disappear back into the woods and
I
do
hear
my
you.
own thing, right?
And so before passing it to D, I would just say, regardless of any of these unknowns, right? I do that to say, what is the speculative scope, right? Like, and then we can look and to say, okay, what signals can we get? What can John see in the data, right? And we do have now the ability to focus on batches or, some of that stuff that would be relevant. And in that information, we can say, oh, is this regional? Was this due to, whatever? And there is general consensus that, the Pfizer batches had a great deal of variability, right? There are metallic particles in them. Let's just not go any further than that because we don't need to be speculative, right? We can just say those could have adverse effects and those can vary by batch. We know that batches didn't have the same handling in the cold storage. We know that if they're not, shaken right or other things, you can get a 5 or plus X more dense whatever, thing in one shot versus the other out of the same vial. We know that there can be variability in how it's shot into the arm, if it's into the intramuscular or if it hits a vein, and then more quickly moves through the body. But what we need to do is just keep all of these things in scope and then just say, hey, that's a possibility, but don't get overrun by fear today by that because, we think that's a low probability or, whatever. And regardless, that type of a thing would be noticed, in the final data, and then we'll figure it out, right? We'll find where the problems are. And I approach it 100% the same way. So it's other people that run with it and go nuts, right? And I've calmed my mom down about 5G a whole bunch of times and have things I could scare her about that I specifically don't because I don't want to send her over the edge. So I know 100% what you're talking about. So I'll stop with that and pass it over to D.
Thank you. I just want to give the other kind of conclusion to the other part of what I was saying is that, so the way that we can help, okay, first, before I get that, the best example of the overreaction by even people in the freedom movement, okay, or the best example I can give maybe that shows that all of us are not very good at realizing that we are kind of affected in a negative way without realizing it is, I think it was about 6 months ago or 4 months ago, I went into Spaces and I just brought up the idea, very analytically, very calmly, that if you were to write all the evidence that there was even a COVID was actually a novel virus, and on one side, and all the evidence that there isn't or there wasn't on the other, and just to try that, and then ask yourself the evidence that COVID actually did exist. Where did that evidence come from, and is it a trustworthy source? Given the fact that most of the people in the freedom movement agree that we've been lied about so many things. So I just sort of just presented that, and the blowback I got from that, I was just trying to make the point that even starting off from the beginning and accepting that it is even as a new virus is already going down, when I got away and when I, did that task, and when I calmed down all my negative affective emotions and just looked at cold, hard, black and white on both sides of the paper, the conclusion, the logical analytical conclusion is no, there is not enough evidence to even believe that this was even a virus, that was a new virus. So anyway, so I just use that as a simple example. But the positive spin I want to give tonight, just reaffirming my whole message here, is the way out of it, the way that I help the students individually in the classroom, but also from the research. The way out of this is not through the data. Well, for people who are calm, yes, data isn't great, but for the people in the middle now, or people who you care about that are caught in the state, there's the other three positive affective parts of our emotions, or our affective part of our brain. And the theory that I have come up with, and this is not Desmet or the gentleman, the neuroscientist, because he died before COVID. See, Desmet takes us all the way there. He explains everything, but he doesn't give us, in his interviews, any solution. He says, I have no idea how to reach the masses, and I have no idea why certain people buy in and certain people don't. So that was the question that I, with my research, went to answer, or at least come up with a theory. So my theory, and what has worked for me in 25 years in the classroom with students that are really, really off the rails, is by activating their positive affective reaction, natural instincts. And my theory about that is just, it's about balance, right? We are affective humans. We can't be like Spock. We can't be emotionless. And if it's the case that our emotions are just out of balance, that's the hypotheses, we can balance them by not denying the negative ones, but by expressing and experiencing the positive ones. And that will naturally balance ourselves off. Every mother knows this, every father. If your child's crying, if you show them care and love, what happens? They stop crying. So that's one of the positive emotions: care, belonging. The second one is fun, play. Again, parents and people know that if someone's kind of frustrated or whatever, or you name the negative emotion, if they can start lighten up a bit, have a little more play, have a little more fun, guess what happens? They start to balance off. Happens all the time in my work. So care, fun or play, care. And the third one is enthusiasm, or the seeking part. So it turns out there's a positive emotional part of our brains that loves seeking new things for the sake of seeking them. So enthusiastically seeking out trying new things, sort of, it's called the Dr. Pan sorry, I can't get his name right. The neuroscientist calls it the seeking. So seeking is like the adventure, the enthusiasm. That's the marker. That's the feeling. You're seeking when you feel enthusiastic. So if you want to help yourself or help other people, ask yourself each day, what can I do to have a little more fun, play? What can I do to feel more connected and experience care, give care, receive care? And how am I feeling as enthusiastic as I can be about life and other people? So that's the package. Thanks, Wog.
Hey, Wog, I see Kevin McKernan and Dr. Shack down there. Any possibility bringing them up for speakers? I'm fading here. I'm falling asleep.
Yeah. No, I can tell you're falling asleep. Yeah, I can throw the mics. I just try not to, pester people if they come into the room. But yep. Who wants to co-host? I threw it to Sue Spider, but I'm probably going to be AFK here for a bit. Who is the other guy? Dr. Shakti?
No. It looks like Dr. Chris on the screen.
Dr. Chris. I don't see a Dr. Chris, but
it's a black and white picture.
oh yeah, Dr. Cassandra. Oh yes, her. Yes, of course. Yeah,
Yeah.
I know I've heard her. Okay, there you go. And then if anybody wants to, as far as I'm concerned, anybody can co-host at this point in time, but I will not be present.
And Kevin McKernan, did you throw it to him?
Yeah, but a lot of times people just sort of like to. Yeah, everyone's been invited, but
All right, cool. Thanks.
yeah.
I'll be in probably another 10 minutes.
All right. Well, thanks for coming in, John, and thanks for all the work with the video. And don't forget, guys, the video was it's in the pinned things or whatever. If anybody else wants a mic, just request it now. I'm going to be sort of letting you guys self-assemble yourself. Oh, look, Sue Spider's up, so he can take care of everything from here on out. But let's see what we can come up with and have some fun or unfun.
Well, thanks, Wog,
whatever.
and thanks for taking all the arrows. When things get harder, and appreciate your hard work here, John. And it really makes a difference, and it's awesome. So just so grateful, not only for the work you do, but coming here and sharing with everyone. It's great. So super appreciated. Dee, I just loved hearing every time you said the word affective about humans and the consciousness. I'm not sure if you've ever been exposed to the work of Dr. Mark Solms, from South Africa. But if you haven't, let me know that would be great if you haven't
I
run
haven't.
into that
Thanks.
already.
I will send you a message to get his contact. Thanks very much.
Yeah, you bet. He's the person I learned that consciousness was affective through, and even the meaning of the word and what affective meant, this emotive state of where consciousness comes from, the whole amygdala, the center of fear, memories. Just you're going to have a heyday with that based on every single thing you said. And back to our just close on our AI thing. AI is so far away from being affective because it's all around that. Yeah, John, it can't get a sense of self-presence. It doesn't know fear. It doesn't know hope, right? And all they're really doing is programming the logic gates, that outer layers, the cerebral cortex, the great, calculators. It's not that more complicated, strategic, fear, reward, other system, and goals in an AI model are different. And so, anyway, I am just so grateful for all this and your comments on that very thing with AI, John. You're spot on. Thanks for sharing that too, outside the data.
I guess I'll just say you're welcome because there's dead air here. Anybody want to speak? I'm tired. It's been a long night.
Okay, a couple things. All right, the Red Pill Starter Pack is in the bubble. Section 2, which is the intermediate pack, is up there as well. I'm working on Section 3 and Section 4. But I've been in contact with people from Japan, and they got hit bad. And they didn't have mandates, and they have an uptake of over 80%. And the voices shouting back really need some backup. And I'm in contact with a Japanese businessman who wants a connection to Dr. David Martin. I've also talked to him about you and your court case there, John. And I just want to connect these people because they really do need some backup in Japan. As bad as we think we have it over here, it's really bad over there. And things are starting to unravel there as well. So if you know anybody who I can connect these, like just DM me and I'll connect you to so you guys can,
The one with the
help these
hand up
people out.
right now, Dr. Shack, no, I think knows David Martin. I don't really know him that well.
Okay, well, and there's a guy I want to hook up with you, another engineer who basically, I think he's a chemical engineer or something, but he walked through the remdesivir molecule in layman's terms in a room so that lay people could understand it. It was just brilliant. But he has more data. He's also an expert witness with remdesivir in a California case. And yeah, WOG's going to try to get you two guys together. I'd love to hear a space with you two guys talking about your data. And I'm, hoping, fingers crossed. But anyway, yeah, that's it. Over.
Hey, Dr. Shack, we're just freewheeling. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, you're freewheeling, and I am looking down. I'm like, Kevin, bring Kevin up. Kevin, hello. Dude, we're on the same platforms half a dozen times. I never get to talk to him. Yeah, I know you're freewheeling, but I was just actually going to ask. I know I was trying to close the loop with you yesterday on specifically that topic of remdesivir, and I'd asked the question about whether or not you could suss out of the death certificate data the relationship, if you will, if there's any correlation at all to the medication that somebody received in the hospital, an associated death, and then we were talking briefly about whether or not it could be tracked back to remdesivir, and then I think you had mentioned that it was actually fairly apparent that kidney failure was a significant cause of death, but you couldn't necessarily track it back to a prescription or a treatment. So that was like one angle that I was trying to pull a thread with you last night, and I was so freaking tired I could barely see straight. So I could not follow through with that thought process. So I'm not sure I'm in much better shape right now, but yeah, that was kind of sort of where I was wanting to go with finishing up that thought process. And I'm like, and then there's Kevin. Kevin, you're down there.
He'll come up, I hope. Anyway, so the remdesivir thing, yeah, all I have is data. I don't have. It doesn't say what they were prescribed. I don't have med charts or history, but I will say that acute renal failure N17.9 is the highest signal of any reasonably sized number of deaths that occur in a year. ARF is the highest increase year over year. It's 100% more than expected, and I use actually that was going down, so I used average. Generally, I used a linear least squares, so just I approximate a line of the prior 5 years, 2015 through 19. But because it was a negative slope, 2015 through 19, I opted for the more conservative average, so a straight line across instead of a diminishing line, and that's what I based my excess on. And the excess was I forget what percent in 21, but in 22 it was 100%. It's double where you would expect it to be, double the average of 2015 through 19, and the combined amount it hits an excess of 85% over 2 years, which combines for 1,840 more acute renal failure deaths than expected. That's not 1,840 acute renal deaths. That's 1,840 more than expected, which is almost double over those 2 years. It's just crazy, crazy numbers. I don't know. I don't see what else could be causing it other than remdesivir and maybe a little bit of the vaccine with one of the multi-organ kind of things.
Yeah, and I think that was the other thread I wanted to pull was, what else could it have been? And I don't even remember. To be brutally honest, I think the last couple of years have just completely blurred. I'm struggling sometimes trying to figure out when was remdesivir actually entered into the populace in any meaningful way.
There was four. There were three. Oh, I'm sorry. I just wanted to answer that. There were 3 dates with approvals. I have them in one of my presentations. I don't know where I put it. Oh shoot. But there were 3 different dates. It started in May. There was another one in around November, and there was another one somewhere else. But there were 3 levels of approval who it was approved for. So you see really a mass. I believe it ramped up at the very end of 20, and so you see it taking off. There's a little bit in 20, but then it really takes off in 21, and then 22 is through the roof. And confirmation they're still doing it is a guy told me that he was going to see his father in Worcester, and when he got there, it was on the board. And it's like get him off it, yell at the doctor, and so he did, and he got his father off it, and his father walked out in a week. But they're still prescribing it as of a month ago.
No, I'm well aware of that. I think we all know somebody that knows somebody, but it's the same issue. As soon as you find out that somebody's going into a hospital, I mean, the emails just fly. Absolutely do not allow them to put them on remdesivir. I mean, it's just, and then sadly, I mean, it's just people still aren't aware of the issues, which is, part of the problem. But the second thing that I just wanted to ask is, and again, I apologize, John, if I'm following up on questions I asked you yesterday, but the issues with, it's the legal end of this. It's how do you get the local sheriffs, if you can pull that thread in terms of what their actions could be with your data, which goes back to David's premise of trying to sort of find it, multiple paths, multiple avenues, if you will, of prosecution. Can you speak to that at all?
I mean, it's not much more than he would say, which is, get to know your local guys, bend their ear, come up with the evidence, feel them out to find out if they would be willing to move forward with an investigation. You can provide them with reasonable belief and suspicion, which gives them probable cause to investigate. But is a local guy gonna push that envelope? Is there a DA that's gonna overrule them, tell them back off? Some of them have legal duties to investigate. I mean, once they're presented with evidence, they're not, But what's happening all over the U.S. right now, in all these Soros districts, is they just don't. They don't give a crap. They're not pursuing crimes at all. It's all political. So you have to go to red states, have to go to red areas, and then even then, find a guy who's not political, but rather just wants to be a sheriff and do his job, or a detective and do his job. And then you have to find out how he's not going to be overruled by his bosses and not worried about getting fired. I mean, it's such a damn game we shouldn't have to go through, but that's where we are, because they have a monopoly on criminal prosecution. I think what's going on in the Switzerland thing is that it's not like somebody said the AG is now going after the president. I think a citizen brought that because they have a weird thing where they can actually bring charges, and then the state picks it up, or the nation picks it up. But anyway, where we are, you got to get to know these guys, feel them out, and try to put together a dossier of information that can then kick off a real investigation. And to be honest with you, I should do that. I mean, I'm the person to do that, except I'm in Massachusetts behind the blue wall. I'm screwed. There's one guy I think I can approach. I'm not going to say his name here, but he used to be a cop and then he became a politician. I think he's the only guy I can go to.
No, I get it. I totally get it. And just as a random data point, completely going sideways from where my thought process was. Again, it's late. I don't know if anybody's paid any attention to the new number 2 that is just soon to be the number 2 to the CDC. If anybody is aware of his sponsorship and pedigree, if you will. And I think his name is Dr. Shaw. He will be the number 2 at the CDC. Proudly endorsed by the Soros Foundation.
No idea, but my congressman is Hugh Auchincloss's son.
Yeah, same issue, different same problem. Yeah. No, well, like I said, I think there's a lot of effort right now on multiple avenues for prosecutions. I think there's something to be said for landing some of these prosecutions inside these states, make them states' actions instead of federal, which is, I think, where a lot of people tried to go initially. Just figuring out how to make it work and just pushing on all fronts. And just keep on pushing.
Yeah, I'm gonna try a. It's just gonna be a brief. It's not a motion. It's not a complaint. It's just I'm gonna submit a legal brief, and it will have information, and it's just a trick I'm gonna try to obligate people to act on their legal duty. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, no, to be continued. And again, I think getting you guys hooked up with, I think I'll be brutally honest. I think David's probably got one of the better legal approaches. He certainly thought it through. He goes through RICO, whether it's RICO, whether it's he's thinking through all the different ways that this can, that we can actually, see something in our lifetimes to slow some of this down.
Yeah,
Um,
I actually arrived at the same kind of stuff he's talking about, and I'm just a guy with 1 year of law school. I got kicked out at 56. And of all the statutes I looked at, I've pretty much done a lot of stuff on my own. And he has now come down to just about the same list I have, except for one thing where we differ, and that is seeking out a grand jury early on, and also a multi-point. I think he was on board with the multi-point offense and the multiple fora and legal theories, but yeah, it's all RICO. It's all Sherman Act.
Clayton, Sherman.
Yeah,
John,
it's a lot.
John,
Yeah, go ahead.
John, can I help you? I'm officially advising the remdesivir class action lawsuit out of California, and I've been teaching doctors about what is inside of remdesivir. I'm the chemical engineer, electrochemical engineer that is completely reverse engineered everything, all the components and all of the functions and all of the mechanisms inside of remdesivir. And I produced a number of very popular infographics. I've been exposing this for a very long time, but I have a limited voice. I'm on the other side of the world in Southeast Asia, Cambodia, so I have limited opportunity to. So I've been working through online channels, whatnot, to get this out to people. And Judy Mikovits has reviewed my information, and the Truth for Health Freedom movement was presenting my information at their conference just 2 days ago. I would like to brief you on everything that I found. I'm sure you'll be blown away, just like so many others are. And it's crucial that everybody understands exactly what is inside of remdesivir, how it's working, what the mechanisms of action are, how this is killing you, how this is causing this damage. And I tell you, and you better check this out, because there are illegal, internationally recognized chemical weapons of mass destruction inside of remdesivir. Literally, sarin gas, RVX nerve gas, cyanide with a cyanide delivery system, literally in their own literature, showing the cyanide molecule metabolizing off of the remdesivir molecule directly into your blood. And this is in a pro-hormone and pro-drug format to create even more downstream poisons, more deadly downstream poisons inside of your body once this metabolizes. There's nothing inside of this molecule that could ever possibly help you, that could help your body, that could heal your body in any way and give you any nutrition or something like that. There's also nothing inside of it that could ever possibly differentiate one so-called quote-unquote virus from another virus, or one molecule from another molecule. So these claims that it hunts down, with some laser tracking system and GPS and self-driving and facial recognition software, it tracks down SARS-CoV-2 out of all the viruses in your body. This is just complete, utter, absolute lies. And I show that in my analysis as well. I'm going to be briefing General Flynn on it. They're setting up a meeting for that soon, and this needs to go before like military credentialed at the highest level chemical weapons experts. They're going to verify my findings 100% completely. I absolutely know this, and I'm confident in that. I'm trying to get it before the Novichok inventor who has defected to the United States, and he's going to confirm it as well. This is so huge. And the guy who made this happen, the guy who was running this, the use of remdesivir on Ebola to kill all of these Africans, that was Rajiv Shah, the president, right, the CIA head of the USAID. And he has now been made the president of the Rockefeller Foundation. So this is directly from the Rockefeller Foundation. People need to understand where this is coming from. It is Donald Rumsfeld, Mr. Chemical Weapons himself, who said that Saddam Hussein had chemical weapons of mass destruction and was using them on his own people, which was obviously, as we all know, found out to be complete lies, completely false. Never they found any of this in the country. And now Rumsfeld, who made remdesivir as the chairman of Gilead, they have now used chemical weapons, weapons of mass destruction, against their own people. They are using it against us right now. RVX nerve gas, it's the exact copy molecule inside of this molecule. And RVX nerve gas was used to kill, to murder Kim Jong-un's brother in Singapore. You might all remember the sensationalized, they show this everywhere. This little Vietnamese woman that was hired to come up behind him with a rag, put it over his mouth, and then he started exhibiting symptoms of quote-unquote COVID. Very difficult to breathe, extreme difficulty breathing, falling down, losing consciousness, getting up again, some seizures and this kind of things. And after 3 hours, he was dead, right? Just from a rag. These are incredibly deadly substances inside of here. And it's literally just poison on top of poison on top of poison. And there's a Novichok chassis, sarin chassis, and they built this. They also attach an adenosine molecule to it, and then attached cyanide onto that adenosine molecule, so that then when these Novichok and RVX break off, and the fluorine breaks off, your cyclosarin gas breaks off, then you're left with an adenosine triphosphate molecule, and then it has cyanide that they've attached on there. So they're hijacking your ATP process, and that's going to go into your mitochondria, and then drop off cyanide is going to toxify and kill, right? It's a Trojan horse. So your mitochondria is going to take in this ATP and be murdered with this cyanide. And then it's causing cellular death and organ failure, catastrophic organ failure. This is what they've done in here. This is the ultimate killing machine, and that's why you're seeing up to 53% of people dead from taking it. So people need to not only get lost in the fraud of this pharma industry, the magic spell that they're putting on and everybody to dodge you away from the actual contents. You need to open the hood of the car and look inside, see what's inside. What is causing this death? What is causing this damage, right? And I was included in some conference calls with these emergency doctors, ICU doctors, running around from hospital to hospital when they were kidnapping these different people, and even doctors, kidnapping these doctors in the hospitals, had them in ICU and forcing remdesivir into them. And his team of doctors was traveling around between all of these different places and trying to get these people out of there. To no avail in the middle of all of that panic. And different people trying absolutely everything that they could to save these people, and especially after they were given remdesivir and they go into anaphylactic shock and their organs are shutting down. And they tried absolutely everything, and the only thing that worked, they said the only thing that's working, but it's working like magic, it's bringing them back seemingly instantly, was a cyanide kit. It was a cyanide kit. It was bringing them back. Now, why is that? Well, of course, their own literature, which I've shown in my infographics to everyone, shows that it's delivering cyanide directly to your bloodstream. Now, I'm sure no one in this room would appreciate it if I came up behind you with a dropper full of cyanide and pulled your mouth open and started dropping this into your mouth. And if I did so, I'd be charged instantaneously with murder. Right? If I did it to several people, I would be right, hailed as a serial killer all over every television across the world. But you know, hey, if I hide this in a food grade delivery system and call myself a pharmacist or call myself a National Institute of Health president, well, well then I'm a hero, right? I'm such a
Hey,
hero.
Alpha, can I ask a couple questions?
Please do.
Because I'm not a chemistry guy. But I mean, you mentioned sarin, and there's no arsenic in sarin, and then you were talking cyanide. What if you did a mass spec on remdesivir? Would you find arsenic in it?
There's no arsenic in remdesivir. I did not say arsenic, and there is no arsenic in remdesivir.
So, like I said, I don't know chemistry. What's in cyanide? I thought it was arsenic and cyanide.
It's carbon triple bonded to nitrogen. So hydrogen cyanide is carbon triple bonded to nitrogen, and then you have a single hydrogen molecule off the back. So if you just do an images Google images search for cyanide, you can see very quickly, and there's a lot of information about this.
Okay.
And
I'll take a look.
Yeah, very happy to do a Zoom call with you, go over my infographics, and go over this all with you step by step, so you fully understand everything about this. Very
Yeah, I'm interested. I'm going to talk to a friend of mine who was a Cornell chem guy, engineer. But I'm so ignorant about about chemistry. In semiconductors, there's a joke. You don't walk onto the floor and say, "Huh, I smell almonds." Nobody says that because the whole place will shut down, right? And I thought that it was the gallium arsenide process that was using arsenic, and it was that there was a cyanide portion of it. I always thought arsenic was in cyanide. I guess I'm just wrong. Easy to look up, but thanks for entertaining my questions.
Well, there's cyanide can be contained in all kinds of different molecules and processes, and cyanide is used in endless number of applications and an endless number of solutions, and very common solutions as well, like acetonitril or acetone products as well that we use in a number of industrial purposes. And they even use acetonitril to attach a cyanide to different molecules. That's very common in chemistry also. So it's certainly in some processes for some chemistry applications there can be arsenic used in that process, but cyanide is certainly definitely absolutely not something that is in any way exclusive to arsenic being involved. You'll certainly know a lot more about chemistry after I break this down for you. And
I'm interested. I am interested. I try to stay away from the technical stuff. McKernan will tell you that. I try to avoid all the stuff that he talks about. There's just too many rabbit holes, and I like to stay high level and legal and strategic, really, with how do we get these guys. But I do plan on with remdesivir. I'm really thinking about going to the district attorney or some kind of investigator who will bring me there with credibility from the investigator. And if I knew more about the chemistry, I think that might help. So I'm interested in talking to you. I don't know about the rest of the guys here.
Any other questions on remdesivir, or should we move on to rapid?
You can move on. I'll send a DM to Alpha Omega.
Well, it looks like Rabbit's got big ears. You never know what's going on over here. Go ahead, Rabbit.
Oh, thank you kindly. I actually just popped my note into the little purple comms button down there. It was related to legal pathways and just expanding our general network of people and processes so that we can see not only a cease and desist on the jabs, but then also work as efficiently to get retribution. There's a wonderful lawyer in Florida, and if folks haven't made connections with him, I would strongly recommend that. Jeff Childers out of Florida. So yeah, it's but my comments there. Thank you so much for letting me speak, and Godspeed on y'all's mission.
Very good. Keep on
Hey,
keeping
John.
on.
John, I'm going to tap out for tonight, and I'm just going to close the loop with you on some other thought processes in a little bit. Probably tomorrow, if that's all right with you.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm leaving too. Going to bed.
All right. All right. All right. Thanks a lot.
Good night. Thanks.
All right. Well, the name of the room is titled after John, so maybe that's our cue. Thanks for coming in, John. Thanks for everybody else.
Well, I want to hear from John Garrett, actually. I feel bad he came
Mhm.
up as speaker and hasn't had a chance to talk.
Well, is he up here still? Because I can't see him. Okay,
Yeah,
well, just let's
he's
free
sitting right
spin it.
there. John,
Okay.
speak so I
Yep.
can get out of here. He might be stuck somehow.
Well, he could be because I thought I saw him up and then I don't saw it. The guy with the gas mask, right?
Yeah, he's on my screen.
All right. There he
No.
is. There he is. We got him. He's horny. He's ready, John. He's ready.
There he is. I see turn your mic on, off, connecting. Hey,
So I tried.
what's going on?
No, can anybody hear me?
Yep, you're good.
Okay, great. No, I heard you earlier in the on the Rumble space, and I've just only been listening here about a half an hour. And actually, my Bluetooth hijacked my phone in the car, and I hit the speaker button by accident, and then I shut it off. So I don't know if my hand's been up for an hour or something, but I didn't really have much to say. But I really enjoyed listening to the part two and everything that I've heard here tonight. And maybe I'll see you tomorrow. I don't know if you're going to be up in Marblehead tomorrow or not, but it'd be nice to see you guys.
Yeah, I mean, I'll try, but it doesn't look good right now. But yeah, all right. Talk to you later.
Good night.
Good night. All right, Wog, you saying we're done?
I don't think we have much more to cover here, but there's a couple other people who haven't spoken here. We got Reggie hasn't spoken. Reggie, did you have something to say?
I just wanted to say hi to you, Wog, and thank John for all his work. I just been enjoyed listening tonight. So, and Noonie, thank you for what you've been putting out. I've been sharing that to my my friends that I'm trying to convert. So, thank you all for your work. That's it.
Excellent. Well, it's all just such well-behaved rooms. We didn't even have any fights or anything. All right. I think that's about it. Do you have any parting words of wisdom, John?
Yeah. Don't be pussies. Get out there and kick ass. Take the fight to them and stop putting up with his shit. I don't care if you're in Canada or the U.S. I started out getting dirty looks, getting yelled at in Costco, getting yelled at, called names in the post office, being put to the ground 3 times in a soccer game, bloody knees, and guys swearing at me, yelling me to put on a mask. And here I am 3 years later, and it seems like there's a lot of people coming around and thinking the way I'm thinking. It's like, just stop complying, you know? And even if your neighbors and all these other people that they're going to put you down. So anyway, that's it. Just don't put up with any shit. You could take your take your, oh God, I can't even talk. I'm so tired. Natural law. Take your individual liberties in your in your own hands. Just say no. Make them arrest you. Make them put their hands on you. Make a big deal out of it. It's okay if your kids think you're crazy for a few months. In the end, they'll think you're a hero. Thanks. Thanks for everybody.
Awesome. Well, there you go. Straight from the horse's mouth. Let's cut her there, guys. It is a recorded space, so you guys will be able to go back for the space, and kind of went a little bit longer than I thought. But lots of goodies in here. But then also don't forget that there is the video with all of the graphs and such that John went over with the data. The second follow up to the first one he did with super spreaders there. So that should be linked down in the little doobly doo down there. Everything's up in the nest as well. And this is a recorded space, so you can share it or whatever, come back to it. It's recorded in multiple ways, as is our want on my profile. Zinc here, his profile, and I think Super Spreader's profile. He's not in here right now, but yeah, just perv around and you'll find all this stuff. So big thanks to all the listeners, as always. Without you guys, we wouldn't really be doing it. And yeah, like John said, get get going on something. And then the other thing is get going on something and then put this shit down. It's not just on any one person's shoulders, right? It's a team effort. Let's not duplicate effort. Let's figure out a way to make templates. Let's figure out a way to get into this data in the proper way and not spin our wheels going in the wrong direction. So that's the greatest thing with this crowdsource stuff. So if anybody else wants to start a room, do it and DM me, and I'll just park my profile in there if you want people to come in. Okay, thanks again. See you. Bye bye.